It's gonna maybe another 8 seconds or so. Hey, everybody. Tonight we're debating whether or not evolution is supported by the evidence, and we're starting right now with PhD Tony's opening statement. Thanks for being with us. Tony, the floor is all yours.
Okay, let me just share my screen.
And folks, thanks for
Okay,
being
is
with us
that,
tonight.
sorry.
No problem. I'm going to just tweak it, squeeze it so it fits the screen a little bit better. And Tony, thanks for being with us. The floor is all yours.
Okay, so the topic of today's debate is does the evidence support the theory of evolution? And we're going to start with a brief survey of how to use peer-reviewed literature because this is often where misconceptions arise between me and the people I debate on this forum. Here, for instance, is a graphic representation of peer-reviewed studies in reputable journals. If you are taking hypotheses and studies that have not been peer-reviewed and are not in reputable journals, then you cannot say with confidence that they are logically well-structured or have sound methodology. You just can't make that assertion until they have been subject to rigorous peer review. Now, some of the articles that make it through peer review are nonetheless shown later to be wrong. Many of them are theoretical. Some of them have methodological errors that weren't caught by the peer reviewers. This reduces the amount of valid literature. And then there are peer-reviewed literature that leaves open that some of the peer-reviewed literature has not yet been confirmed. It hasn't yet been replicated. It hasn't yet been validated by subsequent research. This is the body of literature that you should be relying on. If you take hypotheses from that have not been replicated and or validated, you again can't treat them as having equal weight to hypotheses that have been replicated and have been validated. Here we get to the final hurdle, which is where a lot of interlocutors on this channel stumble, which is where they take data from peer-reviewed journals and they twist that data and interpret it in different ways from the authors, the peer reviewers, and the editors of the papers. If you do this, you are more than likely incorrect. It's not impossible that you're correct, but the peer reviewers, the authors, the editors, and all of the subsequent scientific literature has said that your interpretation of the data is not supported by the facts presented in the paper. And this is exactly what my last set of interlocutors did. They presented multiple papers and then claimed that those papers supported their positions. So having done a quick revision on how to use peer-reviewed literature, let's get on to the main topic for today. If evolution were correct, what would we expect the evidence to look like? We would expect a progression from simple to more complex organisms with increasing time. For example, from invertebrates to vertebrates, with early skeletons being largely not mineralized. And we would expect gradual convergence towards modern life forms. We would not expect abrupt transitions. We would not expect, we would not expect to see, for instance, human or rabbit remains in the Permian or in the Cambrian. So, if creation were correct, what would we expect the available evidence to look like? We would expect sudden and spontaneous emergence of life forms and without precursors. We would expect this because there's no reason for a creator to do things gradually, to do things in a series of incremental steps. We would not expect chronological ordering since the creator would not be constrained to do things in chronological order. And we would not expect gradual convergence toward modern life forms. What we would expect is instantaneous creation of modern life forms. And now we're going to look at the observational data set. So I'm going to do a simple timeline from 4.56 billion years, initial conditions through to the present. If my interlocutor wishes to dispute geochronological literature, I have presentations on that we can explore. But the earliest evidence we have for life is low carbon-13 deposits in zircons from about 4.1 billion years old. Geological carbon is relatively rich in carbon-13. Biological carbon is low in carbon-13. You can see in the figure on the left that we have low carbon-13. So that's 4.1 billion years. We have evidence for biological carbon. We see stromatolites enter the fossil record at about 3.7 billion years
Based
ago.
on the bones, as you can see
Stromatolites
by the bones,
structures
based on the bones, based on the bones.
They cement sediment. They're largely formed by cyanobacteria. Moving on, we've got microbial mats that are formed at about 2.9 billion years ago. So we're seeing this gradually increasing sophistication. And then we finally get evidence of large, relatively large, these are actually only centimeters across, in the Ediacaran, which is sort of the latest Precambrian life forms. That occurs about 4 billion years after the formation of the planet. So in 4 billion years, we've seen a steady increase in complexity from microorganisms up to macroorganisms in about 4 billion years. From there, things really take off, and let's look at that period from 635 million years to the present. We see the development of early vertebrates. Sorry, I'm just going to have to move this. At about 510 million years. We see the first insects at about 400 million years. We see
based on the bones, as you can see by the bones,
reptiles,
or the bones, based on the bones, based on the bones.
We see the first mammals entering the fossil record at about 160 million years. Shortly after that, well, 100 million years after that, but shortly in sort of geological terms, we see the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, the famous KT extinction event, where the dinosaurs were wiped out. Focusing in on that, we see the earliest primates come in, have entered the fossil record by 55 million years. We see the first hominins have entered the fossil record by about 20 million years ago. Sorry, these are the first apes, not the first hominins. The first hominins enter somewhat after that. And you can see here that these early hominins exhibit transitional traits. For instance, the position of the foramen magnum, the point where the spine enters the skull. On the left, you see a chimpanzee, which is right to the back of the skull. For a modern human, it's right near the center of mass of the skull. For Sahelanthropus chidensis, one of the earliest hominins, it's in between where the apes and the hominins have their foramen magnus. We can look also at other attributes of these early hominins. On the bottom left, we're showing hip bones. So this is the innominate. This is the bone where the head of the femur joins the pelvic girdle. You can see the Homo sapiens at the top. You can see Australopithecus afarensis just below it, and you can see it's very similar in shape. And then below that is Ardipithecus ramidus. Pantroglodytes is the modern chimpanzee. So you can see that these early hominins have very human-shaped hips. These are very bipedal hips. And you can also see at the top there the dental arrangements between an ape on the right.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Our nearest ape ancestors on the right, humans on the left, and the intermediate Ardipithecus in the middle, where it has reduced in sizes. You can also see the foot structure on the right, where a modern human has a very stiff foot and an inline big toe. Ardipithecus had a stiff outer foot, but had an extended toe, whereas modern apes don't have a stiff outer foot. So the first hominins enter by 7 million years. And we can see this is Ardipithecus ramidus. This is an exemplar. And we can break down its ape-like characteristics and its human-like characteristics. It has small canines and a modern human teeth arrangement. It has a small brain case like an ape. It has relatively long arms relative to its body size, but it has very bipedal hips, unambiguously so. It has loose wrists and straight, flexible fingers, so it is not a knuckle walker. It is not related to gorillas and it is not related to chimpanzees. Its big toe is not inline, but it has a stiff outer foot. We can go on to Homo pithecus, which has a small brain case. It has a large, powerful jaw. It has very robust musculature. It's not a human, but it is converging towards modern humans, which is what we expected to see. So the body of observational evidence available to us is entirely consistent with what we would expect if we were looking at
you see it converging, guys?
We were looking at the product of evolution. Now we can test.
Are you guys watching it converge?
We can test the statistical evidence for common ancestry, and we can do this for in multiple cases. For instance, in this paper, they did a test of whether or not archaea, bacteria, and eukarya are related to one another. They applied statistical tests for that, and in this table here, you can see that all of the statistical tests favor universal common ancestry. There's all of the other branches. This general methodology was applied to primates in this paper, Baum et al. And again, they found similar results. They confirmed that the geographical distribution of the data and the physical characteristics and genetic characteristics of the data are most consistent with the over 45 species in 16 families with universal common ancestry. We can also go to endogenous retroviruses. So these are retroviruses that have entered entered primate DNA, and we can show that we share endogenous retroviruses not only with other primates, but also with other mammals. Here, for instance, human endogenous retrovirus SNL, it was initially named as a human retrovirus, but we actually share it with the vast majority of vertebrates. We can show that the endogenous retrovirus FH entered the genetic characteristics of all animals that we share ancestry with about 70 million years ago. So 70 to 60 million years ago. So and again, there are endogenous retrovirus insertions after we've branched off, after primates, after even apes, after catarrhines have diverged from platyrrhines, we find that there's a series of endogenous retroviruses that we have in common with old world monkeys, with apes, and with chimpanzees. Again, the genetic and the fossil evidence, impartially read, very much supports the concept of evolution.
Thank you very much for that opening. And folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, I'm your host, Dr. James Coons. We are a fully neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. It's all debates and only debates. Gotta let you know. If you did not know, at the bottom right of your screen, you will see the poster for DebateCon 6 Modern Day Debates 2-day debate conference happening in Nashville on November 15th and 16th. That's a weekend. You don't want to miss it. Grab your tickets now. We are expecting to sell out. You don't want to miss this huge event featuring Made by Jimbob, Andrew Wilson, Rachel Wilson, Jake of Rattlesnake TV, and many more. With that, we're going to jump into the opening statement from Made by Jimbob. The floor is all yours. Thanks for being with us, Made by Jimbob.
Should I wait for him to come back?
Oh, you're on mute. Let me just double check.
Should I wait for him to come back?
Yes, that's fine. I think Tony might have had to answer the door or something. So, perfect.
Carry on.
All right.
Ready for you, Jim Bob.
Okay, cool.
I'm having an old man moment.
Okay.
No problem.
All right. Well, so that opening was interesting. I think a lot of those things were mere assertions. It was a nice story. But the problem is none of it actually supports what the claim actually is. So when we talk about is evolution supported by the evidence, it brings up a couple of questions right off the bat. One being, what is evolution? Another being, what is evidence? Is evidence different than data? I would say so. So what is evolution? Evolution is a model in which there is an assumed process by which animals, plants, and other living organisms are transformed into different forms by the accumulation of changes over successive generations. That's what evolution is claimed to be. What is evidence? The available body of facts and information indicating whether or not a belief or a model or a concept, as Tony called it, or a proposition is true or false. What is a model? I would say that evolution is a type of conceptual paradigm that you try to look back into the past and try to lay it onto the past. A model is a paradigm with a set of assumptions which inform how to interpret data. If the assumptions are wrong about the model, then the model collapses. Models are distinct from scientific theories, which, by the way, evolution does not meet the criterion for. Evolution does not meet the criteria for what constitutes a scientific theory. So what is it? It's like a hunch. It's a story about the past. It's an assumption of how animals and the parts of animals came to be that we see today. Some sort of process is what's being argued, right? The debate involves several components: models, data, evidence, and cause. It's important to note that there is a difference between evidence and a model. A model looks at data, interprets the data through the model, but the model itself is not the evidence. If there is data that does not fit the model, then the model itself is in question. I would argue the model of evolution itself is in question. It's also important to note that models do not establish or explain the actual physical processes that my opponent will ultimately run from explaining. An explanatory description of this process called evolution is absolutely necessary, and here's why. We are looking for evidence of evolution. It's in the title. Evolution is a process by which animals, plants, and other living organisms are transformed into different forms over successive generations. So it's reasonable to expect to know what this process is claimed to be in order to establish whether or not there's evidence for it. Now, what we really hear most of the time is things change. My opponent tonight, he just argued in his opening, things change. He just assumed it, right? Yeah, that's the claim. Things change. I want to know how it changed. How did it actually happen, right? Because this is a naturalist claim. This is about causal effects in nature, right? For example, evolution is claimed to be the process by which a liver developed. Surely knowing what the alleged process is would help us determine if it's true or not. Well, my opponent doesn't know the process of the liver developing. He doesn't know how a liver became a liver. He doesn't know how Pakicetus became a whale. But he's asserting that it did, in fact, happen. That would be like him arguing for evidence that a murder took place, but he didn't even know what a murder was. Instead, he's going to interpret data through a model without realizing the model itself is in question. This will ultimately show itself to be an epistemic loop. Now, after the loop, we're going to push him on more granular claims about evolution, because that's what we're talking about. Evolution is a process that's claimed to have happened inside the world of biology, inside the world of genetics. My opponent will do anything it takes tonight to keep the focus off of the granular mechanical claims and keep it on his fossil fetish. Why? Because then he doesn't have to present and explain an explanation for the process. Well, I'm sorry, but the claim that things are similar, and because they're similar, one turned into another, that's claiming a process that you need to explain what that process is. You have to explain the process and the mechanism. So what is the mechanism? Well, the mechanism which is allegedly responsible for guiding Pakicetus, a massive transformation into a whale in little under 15 million years, is random mutation. That's what you're saying is the mechanism. So let's look at some random mutation. The most common mutations that occur are neutral, which is to say that they do not fundamentally change anything, the sequence or anything. They're often copies of existing information that don't do anything. The next common mutation is deleterious, which means for the mutations that do change something, for instance, protein structure or regulation, most of these mutations are harmful in the long run and the short run because they disrupt finely tuned biological systems. Now, the type of mutation that my opponent has to appeal to, which is responsible for producing hyper-specialized features like a liver or beneficial mutations, this type of mutation is this thing called the beneficial mutation, happens to be the least common, the anomaly, and that's being charitable that it's beneficial, by the way. Even if we granted there's a thing called a beneficial mutation, it doesn't explain the change from one universal category of animal to another over 15 million years. For example, he says the wolf-like land animal, Pakicetus, eventually evolved into a whale. That is a process. So let's use their model to look at Pakicetus to whale transition and see if the story checks out. There is a peer-reviewed 2008 paper by Durrett and Schmidt called Waiting for Two Mutations with Applications to Regulatory Sequence Evolution and the Limits of Darwinian Evolution, which calculates how long it would take for just two specific mutations to occur and be fixed in a population. We're not talking, this study is not talking about a whole sequence. We're talking about just a pair of regulatory changes, right? Using standard Darwinian assumptions in animals like humans, just two coordinated mutations could be on the order of 200 million years that it would take. Just two, okay? Even in the fruit fly, the Drosophila, it was several million years. Now, this immediately raises a flag in Tony's model, right? Because we're using their math. So if the basic mechanism of random mutation plus selection can't generate two small regulatory changes in a biologically reasonable timescale, how is it going to account for Pakicetus, flirting with the water and eventually diving in and becoming a whale over 15 million years? Think about that. 100 million years for two basic mutations for a human, about 2 million years for a basic mutation in flies. And by the way, flies remain flies after this mutation. They're still flies. And now you have to look at the Pakicetus claim and say there was a wolf-like animal that turned into a whale in 15 million years, which is extremely short considering the rest of their math. Now, I'm not even including the development of features, which also have to be downstream from some random mutations. Counter-current heat exchange system for intra-abdominal testes, ball vertebrae for vertical swimming, tail flukes for efficient power swimming, blubber for temperature insulation, modified mammae for nursing underwater, fetus and breech for underwater labor, special lungs that they're able to breathe in the deep crushing depths of the ocean. We clearly the timeline is going to keep adding. You either need to add time or speed. And by the way, the time narrative, just add time, is over now. That time is over. The evolution proponents used to argue just add more time. They can't do that anymore. So they have to make these turbo events happen so that a wolf can become a whale in the ocean, right? So the question still remains, how does this occur? We're not going to get an answer, right? We're not going to get an answer. We're going to get assertions that it occurred. Now, he's going to keep looking at fossils, right? Because that's his bread and butter. The problem with fossils is there's already a problem with the model because of chronological inversions. Chronological inversions in this case is when a fossil is found in a timeline that doesn't fit the model. Now, what do? They sweep it under the rug. They just explain it away. Well, that's an anomaly or something like this. So, for example, Tiktaalik, the most venerated fossils of the Church of Evolution, was said to have been predicted by the model for when fish started walking out of the water back into land. You got wolves becoming whales and fish becoming deer, okay? But the problem is there's evidence from their own timelines of quadrupedal footprints that predate that. So they think that's some big hurrah moment when their own model showcases that things already were doing that. There was already a quadrupedal thing walking around, right? This is another problem is when you look at fossils, what you'll hear from Tony, which we heard in his opener, are all pointing to similarities in anotypical features, right? That means phenotypically they're similar. But the problem is phenotype doesn't assume similarity in genotype. In fact, there's a whole list of similar phenotypical similarities with no genotypical similarities. So pointing to fossils and saying, that one's like this, that's all I heard in his opener. The timeline stuff happened. Things are old, therefore we changed. progression from one thing to another, universal common ancestor. There, by the way, universal. There are no universals in evolution. There's always flux changing of particulars. So I want to bring one thing up here that he actually had in his opening. He said, if evolution is correct, what would we expect to see, right? What would evidence look like? He says we would expect a gradual progression. That's the thing in question. We would expect the thing that I'm affirming? No, you can't say I'm going to expect a gradual progression from simple to more complex. What's in question, Tony, is the process from more simple to complex. Not whether or not you can see two things at different timelines, one simple, one complex. The argument is this mechanism took something that was simple and it made it complex through some sort of process you would argue is random mutation. He says we would expect a transition. That's the thing in question, from no vertebrates to vertebrates. That's the thing you're arguing for. So you're saying if evolution were correct, evolution would be correct. That's your argument? No, you can't look at any given creature, any given fossil, and just from the fossil alone demonstrate change, right? You brought up a bunch of skeletons. You were like, and you can see here the transition happened. No, you didn't see right there. What you saw was a skeleton or a fossil that shares similar anatomy to something else, and what you're doing is adding a claim on that this change happens. Well, I'm sorry. If you want to claim that the change happened, I don't want some flirtation that the change happened. I want evidence of what this change actually is, and none of that evidence was presented in his opener, and it won't be presented for the rest of the debate.
With that, we're going to jump into the open dialogue. Folks, just want to say, as you know, so at the bottom right of your screen, DebateCon 6 is our conference coming up in Nashville, Tennessee. You might be like, dang, James, I can't make it. Check out our channel memberships. If you become a part of the Final Word channel membership, if you absolutely can't make it, you can watch them live from home. Check out our channel memberships right now. It's going to be an epic conference, believe me. With that, we're going to kick it over to the open dialogue. Thank you very much, gentlemen. The floor is all yours.
It's like I'm psychic, because the first thing I did in my presentation was say that you can't just appeal to peer-reviewed literature and disagree with their conclusions. The paper that you cited, which is Waiting for Two Mutations, violently disagrees with you about the timescale on which that can take place. They argue that it only needs a few million years, not the hundreds of millions of years that you claimed. They also violently disagree with the results of Behe and Snoke, who are famed creationists who have tried to support this waiting time problem. So you have done exactly what I predicted you would do.
Can I respond to that?
Once I'm finished.
There's
talking,
a lot. No, but there's a lot there.
Once I'm finished
you can't filibuster, bro.
I do want to.
Yes, I know.
You can't filibuster. You can't filibuster, bro.
I know what.
How about some moderating? How about some moderating here?
I know what you want to do, and I'll finish talking, and then you can respond.
All right, relax. So what I want to do is give Tony a chance to finish this point, and then we'll kick it right over to you, Jimbob.
Okay, you did exactly what I said you would do. You cherry-picked something from a paper that violently disagrees with your conclusion, and then you presented it as though they agree with you. They don't agree with you. You're wrong.
Okay, great assertion. Now, let me correct you. So, first of all, I actually said in the opener that the study was about flies. So, yes, for the fly mutation, there's only 2 million years that was predicted. What I said was, because you weren't listening because you were doing old man stuff, was that if you apply the same model to humans, you end up with several 100 million years. And then if you apply that to other things that are more require more time, you actually have to assume a bunch of random mutations. Now, I can throw, guess what? I can throw the entire paper out. It doesn't matter. You know why? Because you, Tony, have to account for and explain the mechanism that takes random mutation and produces not only hyper specialized things like a liver, but you actually have to tell me how it works that the Pakicetus through random mutation becomes a whale. Can you do that for me?
Yes. It's a combination of random mutation and selection pressure. There are evolutionary advantages to people, to
Based on the bones,
organisms
as you
that
can see
go-
by the
that can
bones.
exploit
Based on the
environments
bones.
that their competitors
Based on the
can't.
bones.
So, for instance, a land-bound creature may enjoy an advantage if it can go offshore and eat the food there. So environmental pressure drives will reward or apply pressure that selects for certain mutations, which would be disadvantageous in other contexts but turn out to be advantageous in the particular environmental context that you're in.
Okay, cool. Let's take that claim. You just simply said random mutation with environment pressure produces this thing. That doesn't tell me how that actually works. So how does a random mutation, right, inside an organism of a population produce the effect of becoming a whale over time? How does it actually happen? Not that it happens, right? All you said is, I ask you, how does random mutation actually produce this effect? And you know what your answer was? Random mutation produces the effect.
Yes,
Yes.
because this is demonstrated in reality.
How?
The development of ring species, for instance, species that start out and you end up with end members that are so widely divergent from one another that they can no longer interbreed. You're fixated on this example, but we can make the step that, for instance, if you've got a quadruped, gradually elongating and making its tail larger, making it a more efficient swimmer.
How?
That provides. How do genes
Look,
make tails
dude,
bigger?
look. Let me ask you a question.
Sorry, no.
Let me ask you a question.
Hold on one
I'm
sec.
answering
Okay,
your
one sec.
question.
You're just saying things grow.
What I want to do is just, okay, forgive me for interrupting, but just to restore order really quick, I'll give you a chance to wrap up that point, PhD Tony, and then we'll go back over to Jim Bob. Oh, you're on mute, Tony.
Do Komodo dragons have bigger tails than other lizards? Yes, they do. So evolution is clearly capable of producing things with bigger tails. With different shapes.
Okay, cool. So your argument is Komodo dragons have longer tails.
You're still muted,
just
mate.
to be sure you're.
Come on, dude. Come on. So your argument is Komodo dragons have longer tails than other lizards, therefore they evolved from something what? Not a lizard, or I don't understand. What's your claim here?
No, they evolved from things with smaller tails. We can look at the earliest reptiles. They have smaller tails.
Cool. How?
They evolved to have bigger tails. Similarly, we can see in the spectrum of lizards that they have different tail geometries. So the idea of evolution producing different tail geometries, different limb geometries, different lung geometries, that's entirely consistent with the observable data that we have.
So the question is whether or not the mechanism you're saying produces longer tails or shorter tails can produce a long line of changes where the lizard is no longer, the future lizard is no longer itself, right?
No.
No?
That's a straw man of the evolutionary position.
Okay.
The way cladistics works is you can't evolve out of your clade. So if you track back far enough, you can find the earliest examples of something that's in a clade.
I understand.
But that doesn't mean I can do without your interpolations while I'm speaking. But thank you.
Calm down.
And if you continue doing this, I'll just talk for longer. So this is a classic misunderstanding and straw man of evolution that somehow an insect will evolve into a non-insect.
I didn't say that.
No, if you're an insect, you're going to remain an insect forever.
Cool.
That is the evolutionary model. All of your descendants will be insects. Similarly, anything that is a descendant of a whale will remain a whale forever. But going back in time, they weren't always whales. They didn't have.
That's a contradiction. That's a contradiction.
No, it isn't. And I'm still talking.
Why you talk so much? Let me talk.
Fuck, dude. Tony, I do just
filibustering, man.
Keep it as quick as possible.
Yes, and if he keeps interrupting me, I'll keep talking. I don't
Tony,
take well to interruption.
You're not the moderator.
If you want me to stop talking,
hold on one second.
If you want me to be concise,
all right, Jim Bob.
you've got to stop.
Unbelievable, man.
Jim Bob, I need you to also let me just moderate right now, please.
Yeah, please.
Is that I'm just asking, Tony, if you're able to keep it pithy, just because it is open dialogue. I understand that Jimbob is interrupting, and Jimbob, work with me here, let's let Tony wrap up. We'll come right back to you, Jimbob.
Okay. If you go back in time, there will be an earliest point where there is a member of that clade. That clade did not exist before those members turn up. So it is possible for new clades to be generated.
Okay.
But that doesn't contradict evolutionary theory.
Okay, cool. So you're saying there's a clade of things, and once it's a clade, it remains in its clade, and that thing dies off. But there is a splintering off of the clade that then starts a new clade, and there's another clade that splinters off from that clade, okay? So what I'm asking you, if the Pakicetus is a wolf-like land animal, wolf-sized land animal, right? And in 15 million years, it becomes a whale, not it literally, Tony. Not it literally. I'm saying that's the beginning of the origin story of the whale. Is the clade, a Pakicetus dips its toe in and becomes a little bit aqua-like. And then there's a clade that branches off from the Pakicetus that's a little more aqua-like, right? And so on. Now, that's a claim. How did you determine mechanistically that occurred, please?
Okay, so we know the mechanism by which it occurred, right?
How?
We know that it's so you are denying that we can see in existing animals that genetic adaptation does occur.
Well, no, genetic adaptation, what you call in existing animals, if you're talking about adaptation, what you're pointing to is genetic code or genetic information that's informing a behavior that's well within already existing. Now, you're claiming something else. You're claiming that random mutation in one clade produces some sort of effect that then creates a diversion from that clade. So you have let's say the first thing ever is there's a Pakicetus population, and then there's this new Pakicetus population that's not identical to the previous population. Now, the thing is that what you have to do, because it's the burden of proof is on you. You're going to have to tell me mechanistically how random mutations, right, produce an effect that leads to a whale existing that's downstream from a wolf-like land animal. That's what you have to do.
Do you not understand that genetic drift can occur, that the characteristics
that's your claim.
Animals, it's observed.
No,
you're simply denying observational evidence.
No. What you're observing is things that are similar in fossils, right? Let's do the scientific method. Let's do this.
No, we're observing things. We're observing things in the living world.
Where's the drift?
That genetically adapt.
Like what?
And develop new capacities.
Like what?
That they didn't previously
like
have.
Like
what? For instance, Darwin's finches, or we can look at the plenty of examples of ring species. For instance, there's a salamander in California that is diverging from where you've got a branching away from an original population, and you've got the two ends that can no longer interbreed.
Okay.
So the Ensatina, I had to look it up. The Ensatina schultzi, for instance, this is something that we observe animals doing, and we can observe it in animals.
Okay.
We can observe it in the laboratory.
Okay.
In animals with extremely short lifespans or reproductive cycles.
Okay, Tony, the problem is if you observe a bunch of things with finches and there's some epiphenomenal change in their traits, behaviors, beaks, claw sizes, tail sizes, feather sizes, color, etc., you're actually still looking within a universal called finches, right? Your claim, the thing I'm asking for evidence for, is that the finch, in this case, is stand-in for the Pakicetus. The finch, do you ever see any adaptation in the finch that would lead you to believe that over millions of years, 15 million, let's say, will turn into not a finch and something completely not a finch?
We've already been over this. That can't happen. Cladistically, it will always be a finch, just like
I know.
Yes, well then why are you asking such a ridiculously idiotic question?
You're not understanding my question. If the Pakicetus dies as a Pakicetus, and whatever subclade, subcategory of the Pakicetus, they also die as a Pakicetus, right? What I'm asking for, mechanistically speaking, I don't want a story that it happened. I want you to tell me how it's the case that a clade, starting as one thing and dying as one thing, somehow leaves a trail, not a trail, a future trail toward a pathway. How does a clade create a pathway to something it's not?
That is again such an idiotic question to even ask. It sounds like you don't even know what a clade is. Look. Because no, an individual animal is not a clade.
I didn't say so. I didn't say so.
Yes, you did. You said that it dies as a clade, and then it goes on to all of its descendants will be members of the same clade.
I understand.
All of the descendants of that population will be members of the same.
I understand, Tony. I agree with you. Your view is that there's a category for the sake of taxonomy. You create a category called the clade. Now, whether or not a Pakicetus is itself a clade or it's a subcategory of a clade, it doesn't matter to the question. The question is the category. Let's use the word category so you can actually understand what I'm asking you. The category called Pakicetus, that's a category of an animal, right?
That is a particular class.
Thank you.
I'm not sure.
That's all I need.
I'm not sure that forms a clade.
Okay, thank you. Let's say it's not a clade. Let's call it a category of an animal even, okay? So the claim is a Pakicetus, which is a category of an animal. There's something inside that happens at the population level called random mutation that opens a pathway toward another types of animals becoming eventually a whale, correct?
No.
Oh my gosh, what is it then? What are you claiming?
So when you say the reason I'm taking issue is because you're being very lax in your linguistic. It's not. There is no pathway to another type of animal.
Oh.
It will say the same. It will stay the same type of animal, but it will diverge from the original form that it had in response to a combination of mutation and environmental pressure.
Yes. So what you're saying is that the category called the Pakicetus, which is a land animal that's the size of a wolf, dies. The group of them die as what they are, right? They don't become something else that they're not in their lifetime, okay? What you're saying is a random mutation creates a divergence. Now, the word divergence is the thing I'm referring to as some type of pathway, because if it diverges, what you're saying is that something diverges from a Pakicetus that's similar to a Pakicetus. Then something diverges from the similar Pakicetus to something that's similar to that past Pakicetus. And what you're saying is in 15 million years, there's enough random mutations to eventually produce in long successions of generations and divergence into a whale, correctly? Correct? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. How does that happen?
Through a combination of genetic mutation and environmental pressure. If a mutation occurs that gives an organism a greater ability to access food or greater ability to reproduce biologically viable offspring, then that will be selected for. They will enjoy an advantage over others. This can drive very significant changes, morphological changes in species.
Okay, so you're saying pressures, environmental pressures, somehow influence the random mutation and it's the effects that it produces. So what's causing?
No, that's not what I said.
What causes it? Look, dude, I'm asking you a question. Like, your claim is this: random mutations, right? And some sort of selection process occurs, which then leads this like divergent pathway toward a whale. That's your claim. I go, how does that happen? And you know what you say? You just restate the assumption that it happens. That's all I'm hearing from you.
No, for starters, it's not an assumption that it happens. It is observed in reality. We observe in real time that this occurs with life forms that we can observe in the laboratory. We observe adaptive changes happening to populations of fruit flies and populations of bacteria. So the claim that it doesn't happen, the claim that it can't happen, is instantly disputed because we have experimental evidence that it does.
Tony,
Do you accept that or not?
No. Do we ever see a fly experience random mutation, whether it's natural or introduced by a man, and it results in them not being a fly anymore?
No.
Okay, so I'm asking a question not about whether or not in populations, Tony. I'm not asking a question about inside a population if there's some sort of mutation that either causes harm or causes inability to do something inside the population. I'm asking a larger scale question that's smuggled into the evolutionary claim. When I say a Pakicetus, right, the population has some random mutation that results in a divergence from the Pakicetus to something that's similar to it, and then that similar Pakicetus diverges and creates something similar to the previous one. You're saying that this succession leads to eventually a whale. Now, I asked you, how do you know this, right? It's an assumption, and you say, we observe it. Look at the flies that don't change into other things.
Yes, just like a Pakicetus, as we have established 3 times now, does not evolve into another
That's right.
thing.
Thank you.
It develops into a descendant of a Pakicetus.
Mm-hmm. And then a whale, right?
So and eventually a whale.
How?
Yes. Again, through genetic mutation.
How though?
James, at this point, this debate is over. Either the audience accepts.
Rage quit.
Okay.
No, the debate is pointless.
If I can just,
what he wants.
forgive me,
No,
Tony.
I'm
You're such a baby.
What he wants. I've answered this question multiple times. He just refuses to accept the validity of the answer and then goes back to his talking point as though he's argued anything. This is pointless. This is literally a waste of my time.
Stop crying, man.
What I want to do is, so, gentlemen, I need you to relax for a second, take a deep breath, there's still a lot of good content that's been brought up in your guys' opening discussions that we can discuss. And it's also, because it's open dialogue, there are even some ideas that if you guys want to bring up, we can talk about those as well. I'm sure there are some topics that you guys would probably like to touch on, instead of wrapping it up. And likewise, it sounds like JimBob, Tony's like, hey, I explained this, and I understand that you're not happy with his explanation, but we've got to go to a new topic. So, anything else?
No, I mean, we can go to more granular because this is his claim. So if the question of like, how is it physically happening? You go from one category of an animal and diverges into eventually a whale. I'll ask a more granular question about something really basic. The liver. The liver, as we know, the liver, peculiar to vertebrates, serves a very specific function. It processes toxins. Now, do you hold, Tony, that evolution also produced through random mutation a functioning liver with hyper-specialized task in the body? Do you believe that?
Yes.
Okay. So if I asked you, how does random mutation inside of an organism that doesn't have a liver, how does random mutation produce a highly specialized thing like a liver?
So this is a I'm going to answer indirectly here. So let's look at the development of something like the eye. You're looking at the finished product and you're saying how did you get something so complicated? But we can look back through existing organisms and we can see that there are the same structures in various stages of development. So we know that a non-fully functional liver, a slightly simpler version of the liver, still provides an evolutionary advantage and still functions. And we can see even simpler versions in simpler life forms of waste disposal and waste processing procedures. We can see the spectrum of how these things developed in the existing animal population.
Okay.
So the claim that just because a fully formed liver has to go through all of these intermediate steps, we can see each of the intermediate steps, and we can see that that at each step that population derives benefit from its version of the waste disposal mechanism.
Okay. So the answer you gave, you moved over to an eye. Interesting. You said the eye, what we're looking at is a fully developed eye. Well, under the evolutionary view, you actually couldn't know it was fully developed because it could still be evolving to not be an eye through some random mutation. The other problem you have is I asked you how you develop a liver from random mutation, and what you did is you went back in time and granted yourself a type of proto-liver. So if the answer to how do you develop a liver, and your answer is a different type of liver, I'll just ask the same question. How does an organism that doesn't have a proto-liver and it doesn't have some cells that do similar things at a lower scale, lower magnitude, processing and rejecting toxins, how does random mutation produce the proto-liver then? Well, that's the next question.
Okay, this is perhaps best answered with a practical example. If you go to a color screen and you see a color spectrum from yellow to red, and you can step along the spectrum from yellow to red. Yellow to orange, say. When along that have you transitioned from yellow to orange? Is there a particular point? Is there and the answer is no. There's no particular point you can point to and say on this side it's yellow and on that side it's orange, because it's a gradient. And similarly, the development of organs, the development of biological function follows a gradient. It follows a gradation. So each step is incremental.
Okay. Well, let me just answer to why that's disanalogous. The color analogy is disanalogous, and you actually proved it was disanalogous by saying there's a space between red and orange, or yellow and orange. The fact that you said there's a color called red and orange or yellow, and there's a space between it that's a gradient, the thing in question is actually the solid color, the stripe that you're affirming. Now, if that was a proper analogy, Tony, the thing that would be always changing is in fact the red and the orange, not the thing in between it, right? So evolution holds that an organism, in this case red, is itself, but you're saying it changes over time through something, right? Something changes over time where it leads to something that it's not eventually. Well, the problem with your color analogy is not only did it not answer the question how does random mutation produce a proto-liver, all you said is there's a gradient between changes of things. That doesn't tell me mechanistically how random mutation produces even the beginning of a proto-liver. How does it mechanically do that?
It does. So you understand that there are chemical processes within a living organism, right?
Yes, but they weren't always there, right?
In order to be alive, you have to have chemical processes.
Okay, so not all chemical processes evolved. You had to start with just life, or what?
So evolution is not about abiogenesis. If you want to debate abiogenesis,
I didn't say that.
That's a different debate.
I didn't say that.
So, no, but you're being obstructive and you're interrupting me again.
Stop crying.
In order to try and derail my explanation. There are chemical processes inside organisms. Some of the chemical byproducts of these processes are harmful and need to be excreted. The organisms that can develop mechanisms for binding those toxins and transporting them out through the membrane, they enjoy an advantage over organisms that can't. Therefore, you see the development of chemicals that will react and select harmful material and transport it to somewhere where it can be excreted. So I don't see where the implacable obstacle is that can't be overcome through simple perturbation.
Well, I mean, it sounds like, and this is similar with populations, your argument is that we can only affirm and talk about evolution if you already have populations. But the problem with that view is populations, as you see them from the evolutionary view, are products of previous populations. So the thing I want the audience to notice is constant in my debates with evolution proponents is that they grant themselves fully functional operations of populations, not just the grand scale of the population itself, like a set of apes or a set of Pakicetus or wolves or anything else. Everything that's internally happening inside them, Tony grants that too. And I ask a simple question. he says, for things to be alive, they have to have all of these functions. By the way, if that's true, then there is a set of functions that were already there to begin with. That means that evolution didn't produce the functions. So under Tony's epistemology, he actually can't tell me whether or not the thing called the protoliver was always there or not from the start, like an eternal protoliver, or it was the process of random mutation. It actually produced itself into existence. This is why asking the question, well, what happened before that? They spurg out and they say, oh, we're talking about abiogenesis. Well, we're not really. We're just taking your own view, Tony. And if it's the case that populations, like a population of giraffes, that's a biological effect. That is something we see as a phenomenon, a collection of giraffes. That's a phenomenon we see. Under the evolutionary view, Tony, you have to say that phenomenon called a population was produced by evolution. But the thing is, you can't. That's it. Like, you just can't do it.
Evolution only applies to populations, right? So the fatuous nonsense that we have to assume populations is nescient tendentiousness of the highest order.
You just admitted it.
I didn't interrupt you once while you were spewing your incredibly stupid nonsense.
Change your old man diaper.
You extend some level of courtesy towards me.
You don't earn my courtesy.
You have some ethical background,
I have
which you
on
clearly don't, having the impulse control of a toddler. So yes. Evolution is the process of changes in populations.
Oh.
The very definition of evolution requires the populations exist. It's not a hidden assumption in evolution.
Okay.
How we get there is the process of abiogenesis.
Okay.
And having said that, that's not what he's talking about. He goes back to trying to mire this in how populations started.
Okay, cool.
And no, I can answer the question of whether or not the protoliver was always there. No, it wasn't. In the earliest organisms didn't have protolivers.
I want to.
Okay.
All right, here we go, Jimbob. I'm going to try to unmute
Okay.
you. And sorry about that. I accidentally clicked it at the wrong time.
Gosh.
Now you should be ready, Jimbob.
Okay, yeah. So you just said evolution deals with changes in variation. Basically, deals with the variation that we see in the world, right? The problem is, Tony.
That's not what I said.
What did you say? Just one quick sentence. Just say what evolution deals with. You said is the changes.
Evolution deals with changes in populations.
Okay, changes in populations. The thing is, a new population, is that not a change in something from a previous population?
I don't even properly understand.
Okay,
the question.
okay. A population.
Try phrasing it differently.
Okay, a population that exists is, from your view, from the evolutionary view, is divergent from an existing previous population, right?
Not in any measurable sense.
What? Okay, so listen. If you say Pakicetus exists and there's a divergent from the Pakicetus category
Yes.
through random mutation, the new population that's not identical to Pakicetus, is that new population, is that not an expressed change in the current population?
Well, I mean, but you're being imprecise in your terminology. So for instance, tomorrow there will be a different Homo sapien population on Earth than there is today.
Mm-hmm.
The people alive tomorrow will be different genetically and biologically than the one today.
Yeah.
But they will not be measurably different.
What? That's a contradiction. They're different, but they're not measurably different?
Yes.
That's a contradiction, P and not P.
No, it isn't.
Then how do you know they're different if they're not measurably different, doofus?
So
what the hell's wrong with your brain?
No. You're such an infant. It's fantastic. And you think you're qualified, to actually review scientific literature, and you're here presenting yourself, with your childish interpretation.
Okay, that's cool. Get back to the topic.
When I take two measurements of, for instance, distance, they can be different, but the difference may be below my ability to resolve. It's a matter of observational resolution.
Unbelievable. So populations that come forth from some diversion of an existing populations, you're saying aren't really different, but they are different.
No.
Oh my gosh! Make up your mind.
It depends on the time. It depends on the time scale over which change is allowed to accumulate. If you leave it for long enough, then yes, you can definitely determine.
Okay.
No, you asked me a question, and now I'm answering it.
Okay.
So if you take long enough, I'm sorry, was I not asked a question?
No, I said I do want to give him a chance to finish, and I was talking about you.
Okay, thank you. Given a long enough time, yes, the incremental changes, the infinitesimal changes, will accumulate to be perceptible, and easily demonstrable.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that they are so over short time spans.
I didn't say short. Let's say the whale is downstream from many, many generations of divergent from the Pakicetus. That's the claim, right? The Pakicetus eventually diverges in succession and produces eventually what's called a whale. You agree that the population called whale is not the same as the population called Pakicetus. Now, the point in me drawing out this distinction is to demonstrate that whatever you call a population is the actual phenomenon produced by evolution. It has to be. It's produced by evolution.
No. So I don't. So cladistically, whales are not a separate population from Pakicetus. That's the whole point of cladistics.
Okay.
And similarly, I'd like to explore what you think the alternative hypothesis is.
Yep.
Your alternative hypothesis is that Pakicetus was rendered extinct and that God created whales at some point.
Nope.
Well, who created whales? Where did whales come from?
No, I'm actually taking an atheist view right now and cross-examining your bullshit from the inside.
No, an atheist belief would be to say that there's no God and no creator.
I'm granting it.
You mean an agnostic?
I'm granting it that God doesn't exist for this debate.
Okay, you're granting it. So where did whales come from?
I don't know.
Okay. So that's an agnostic belief. You're just saying I don't know.
Look, Tony, the debate is an affirmative. If I am confused, that's like saying you're teaching a kid evolution and he has some questions about the internal claims about evolution, and the teacher goes, "Listen there, little Tony. Yeah, do you have an alternative?" Here's the problem with your view. An alternative hypothesis assumes that there's a viable hypothesis. Tony, I don't even grant that you have a viable scientific hypothesis, and I can actually prove it to you.
No, you can't.
Yeah, I can. Does a viable scientific hypothesis, so that's a scientific method, right? That's a term in the scientific method, right?
You're trying to pretend that there is one scientific method?
How many are there?
There are a great many.
How many? Like as many genders?
I don't see what that throwaway bit of
it's funny because
nonsense is yes.
How many?
That you think that transphobia is funny.
How many?
Is entirely consistent.
How many scientific
there
methods?
Are many.
How many?
That's more than one.
How do you know that?
Well, for instance, the difference between observational science and experimental science.
Okay, so let's say, do you believe that that natural science claims about causal phenomenon in nature, is that experimental science or observational?
All physics is observational science.
Is evolution physics?
Well, yes.
Okay. So if I say this thing causes scurvy, can I simply use observational science to determine what actually causes scurvy?
Yes.
Really? So if two boats come in and one has scurvy and the other doesn't have scurvy, how do I determine what actually causes scurvy without an experiment?
Well, hang on. You said, sorry, you're now asking a different question without experimentation. Mm-hmm. Yes, you are. I said that you can do it with experimentation.
No, without.
And now you're saying, and now you're setting up a scenario where no experimentation is permitted.
Yeah, I understand, Tony.
It's an idiotic.
Let me clarify. Let me clarify it. Calm down, buddy. You're gonna have a little event here. So, if it's the case that it's only determined by experimentation, you can only determine the cause of scurvy through experimentation. Suddenly, there's an actual strict form of the scientific method because you can't use. Hold on. You can't use any other method other than experiment to determine what causes scurvy.
Scurvy is a specific example where it is possible to experiment, but there are many features. There are many scientific disciplines where experiment is not the way that you determine things. For instance, orogeny. It is not possible for us to make mountains. We don't do experiments on mountain making. We observe the real world and we see what is going on and how mountains are formed.
Okay.
I could see your confusion about what orogeny was, so I thought I'd explain it to you.
That's cool.
So there are very many well-established fields of science where experiment is not accepted as the only technique by which understanding of mechanisms can be gained.
Okay. So which of the scientific methods, the number of which you don't know, there's more than one, which of the scientific methods does evolution make its way through?
Evolution makes its way through, it's an observationally scientific and it has been experimentally validated.
Oh, really?
We've done and observationally validated.
Okay, so you're saying it actually makes its way through the scientific method, the rigid one that we learn in grade school?
We see on short time scales the results exactly consistent with the theory of evolution.
That wasn't my question. I asked you, could you take
that?
Let me answer you.
Your question
let me answer.
Improved it. So that
dude,
it is actually
bad faith. Can evolution itself, the theory, be taken through the scientific method and come out the end as a theory?
Yes.
Okay, so the scientific method, the standard classical one, what is it?
You say the again.
What?
I don't concede that there is a single scientific method.
Is there a classical one?
There is a very simplified one that is taught to high school students.
Does evolution make it through that one?
The parts of evolution that can be tested using experiment have been confirmed via experiment.
Look, dude, just answer the question and stop dodging.
I have answered the question.
Can evolution, the thing you're calling evolution, can it be taken through the grade school scientific method that we learn?
Those parts of evolution that can be tested using the grade school definition of so, for instance, the genetic drift and the change in function in organisms with rapid
What's the observation?
Cycles.
What's the observation?
The observation there is that we see, for instance, the development of the ability to metabolize cellulose spontaneously develop.
Okay, one thing at a time.
Populations of E. coli.
Okay, one thing at a time. So in natural science, we start with an observation, right? From this view, we're going to try to take evolution through the scientific method, the simple one. So what's the observation? Simple. You just see something in the world, in nature. What is it?
We see a divergence of life forms, and we see that the divergence, we observe the divergence in real time in response to external pressures.
Sorry, one observation, just not general life, right? One simple thing with one simple animal, one organism, please. What do you observe?
Okay. We observed, as I just mentioned, the development of the ability to metabolize cellulose amongst bacteria in laboratory experiments.
Okay, so you watch. Well, no, you start with an observation, right? First, are you talking about the ability to metabolize is after introducing a variable, or are you saying there's something you're observing before you introduce a variable? Which one?
We have populations of these bacteria. We put them in petri dishes. We let them reproduce over a long time. We see that in one of the populations, or actually, I think in a couple of the populations, they spontaneously develop the ability to metabolize cellulose, giving them the ability to proliferate in number.
Okay, cool. So you observe that. If that's the observation, what are you introducing and saying is causing that?
We're not introducing anything.
So you can't take it through the scientific method. I rest my case. Let's go to the next topic.
That's
over, dude.
That's absolutely untrue.
I asked you to take it through the scientific method, dude. You have to have a hypothesis about the phenomenon, and you just said we don't need one. We just watch stuff. Good science, bro. You're a science denier.
If evolution is true, then we would expect random mutation to produce differences in function between populations. I didn't interrupt you, did I?
Oh, interesting.
So you expect this to occur. It occurs. We have confirmed our expectation. Our hypothesis has failed to be falsified by the experiment.
Okay, cool. So now there is an experiment, because an experiment requires an introduction of something. So if the observation is bacteria reproduces and then spontaneously develops something, and you're saying that's caused by random mutation, by what you just said, I don't know why you didn't just answer the question. I asked, what causes that? What causes that spontaneous thing to happen? You say random mutation. So random mutation is now your cause. That's the variable. So how do you, Tony, in science, the one that I hold to, which is good, and yours is actually pseudoscience, how do you introduce random mutation as the cause of the spontaneous thing you're seeing in bacteria? How do you introduce it?
So we can genetically sequence the bacteria and determine whether or not the bacteria that exhibit the new property have are genetically identical to the ones that can't. We see that they are not. We see that there are simple, relatively simple changes that have occurred in their genetic code. Therefore, we have confirmed that a random change in their genetics has occurred.
Okay. So do they ever not be bacteria?
No. This is a straw man of what evolution.
I didn't straw man anything. I asked you a simple question.
Yes, you did.
Dude, I asked you a question. You can't have a straw man can't be a question, dude. I asked you a simple question.
Yes, it can.
No, it's not, dude. I asked you a simple question. Just answer it directly.
The question has been asked and answered multiple times during this debate. It has been made clear to you that you cannot evolve out of your clade.
Great. So when you say a clade can diverge into something it's not, where is that present?
No, that's not ever what I've said.
Yes, you said a category.
No, it isn't.
Stop yelling, dude. A category called Tacitus that has some random mutation, which then creates a divergence from the Tacitus category, right? I'm asking you in these. No. Now it's no. You're contradicting yourself.
They remain cladistically related to Tacitus. All of the descendants of Tacitus are in the same clade. They have not diverged from Tacitus.
Okay, cool. So whales are Tacitus.
They are cladistically in the same category as Tacitus.
Okay, cool. So they stay in the same category. What's the new category that makes a whale and a Tacitus not a whale?
Okay, that's a different clade, right?
I don't know. It's your claim. Is a whale different than a Tacitus?
It depends in what sense you're asking the question.
I'm asking from your view.
Cladistically?
Yes.
Are you asking this cladistically?
Yeah.
Are you asking genetically? Are you asking in terms of function?
No.
What is your question?
My question is, what is the category of whale, and is it shared with the Tacitus or not?
So you are familiar with the branch of science called taxonomy?
Yes.
Okay. So you understand that whales are indeed a different species from Tacitus?
Yes.
Yeah, well, they're a different species. I'd argue that whales are a family, actually. Biology is not my speciality, but yes, whales are separate from whales.
Okay.
Fully formed modern whales are separate from Tacitus.
Okay. So a whale is.
But they are cladistically the same.
Okay. So a whale is not the same species as a Tacitus.
Right.
But the first divergence from Tacitus is another species. It's the same. It's a different species of the same, not kind, but clade, right?
but they're descendants, so they
Right.
are incrementally acquiring
Okay.
new characteristics that will eventually, over time,
Okay.
accumulate into a significant change.
Great. Do you see that with bacteria?
Yes.
A bacteria eventually creates divergence where it actually leads to something that's not bacteria.
No, because
So fucking
again,
dude, this is insane.
So, but E. coli, but you're talking, so this is an idiotic. Again,
Just calling it
this is
idiotic. Yeah, it is idiotic.
Yeah,
Let's
okay.
hear from
Maybe
Tony.
if you shut up long enough, you might learn something.
Co-parter.
So a bacteria is an order of life forms. Nothing from within bacteria can evolve out of bacteria, right? But an E. coli, a particular species or class of bacteria, can diverge into something that is different.
Like what?
For instance, MRSA is a variant of the original Staphylococcus aureus, right? So you see different strains of bacteria that have different capabilities and different behaviors that can thrive in different populations arise from bacteria. So when I say that a bacteria can't produce a non-bacteria, right? That's true. But Staphylococcus aureus can produce something that is very different from the original strain of Staphylococcus aureus.
Okay, cool.
And in fact,
my
so
God.
different that we can genetically track Staphylococcus aureus strains.
Okay. Could the bacteria ever lead to a Pakicetus?
No.
Okay. So the Pakicetus, like the whale, has to be downstream from something that doesn't look similar at all to a Pakicetus, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when it goes, if you say a whale is in the same group as a Pakicetus, there's something way before the Pakicetus that's in the same clade as the Pakicetus still?
Yes.
Okay. And how far back does evolution say this goes?
All the way.
All the way to what?
The last universal common ancestor.
Okay. Is the last universal common ancestor a population or an individual?
There would have been it's an individual species, but it would have been a population of them.
Okay, an individual population. And what we know of population inductively is that populations come from previous populations, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if there's a first population, then the thing you just described actually isn't the first population because it came from a previous one, right?
I didn't say it was the first population. I said that it was the last universal common ancestor. There are populations before that.
Okay, so the last common ancestor of Pakicetus was this thing, but that thing also has a last common ancestor, right?
With what?
With, dude, look, if you say a group of animals has, so the whale comes derivative of a Pakicetus, but the Pakicetus, like the whale, comes from something that it's not ultimately, but it's in the same category group, right? A clade. And I go, how far back does this go? And you say it goes back all the way. And I go, all the way. So what is this first moment of all the way back?
Again,
Page 1.
You're talking about this abiogenesis.
No, I'm
argument.
not.
That's not the topic of the debate.
No, I'm not.
You are. You're trying to get to. To the population of how life developed in the first place.
Well, no.
You can assert that you can assert.
You're yelling.
That
you're yelling.
That is exactly.
Yeah, you're yelling.
I'm yelling because you interrupted me.
Okay, look. You're not even. You interrupted me. You interrupted me.
All right, gentlemen, I hate to jump in.
You interrupted me, dummy.
One sec. I hate to do this. Just to be sure that both of you are heard, because people will lose track, just like I will lose track if you guys are speaking at the same time. Are there any thoughts, any topics that we haven't covered? Normally, we would go into Q&A in just a little bit, but the conversation is going so well. If you guys want to explore other topics, I'm all ears. But otherwise, we can go in the Q&A shortly.
A topic that I want to explore, and it's Jimbob's fatuous characterization of the fossil record, claiming that fossils are dated purely by the stratigraphic order in which they're found in. Obviously, this is a barefaced lie. We have geochronological techniques that provide ages back to several billion years ago, and we have multiple different radiometric data sets, multiple different cosmogenic data sets, multiple different geophysical data sets, and multiple different amino acid racemization results that all confirm the ages of the other techniques. So, and indeed, this is the basis of a $1 billion industry.
That is.
Yes.
So is pharmaceuticals, bro.
Mining companies pay billions of dollars every year, hundreds of millions of dollars every year for geochronological analysis because it helps them because it helps them where to find minerals. Young Earth creationism can't do that because it's bullshit.
Okay.
Bullshit walks. Money talks.
Tony, look, hold on.
I'll wrap up
That's
in
enough.
just a few. I'll wrap up in just a few seconds. But the claim that it is all based on stratigraphic ordering is completely frivolous, and it was a mistake for him to get into it because we can ask him when in his timeline 2 kilometers of glaciogenic debris was deposited in Oman.
Okay, well, that's a red herring. I already told you, Tony, that the debate isn't whether or not creationism is true, you dummy. The question is, focus now is whether or not there's evidence to support evolution. Now, Tony, if you grant yourself fossils, age of fossils, I don't care. I'll grant the whole thing for a second. There's nothing about finding something in the ground that looks like something today that actually completes the argument that one thing became another. In fact, there are a multiplicity of similarities in phenotype and anatomy that don't follow. It doesn't follow that they're genetically the same or come from each other. So you tell me, Tony, what is the methodology you're going to use when you find a fossil in the ground? I don't care what age it is. It looks similar to a thing we have today. And you come to the conclusion that this thing we found in the ground is actually indeed an ancestor of this thing because they look the same, anatomically similarities. They have similar functional things going on. You don't have access to genetics, by the way. You tell me, Tony, what's the methodology you're going to use to determine that is in fact an ancestor of this current thing it looks like, or whether it's just another thing that died out that if it survived would have lived alongside this other thing? You tell me the methodology.
We don't make that claim based on fossils.
You don't look at things that are similar. You didn't look at the thing on the beach that turned into a whale and look at the similarities in their anatomy to determine that that would be the thing that eventually diverges and becomes a whale. You don't look at the anatomy.
So there's no claim, and this again speaks to sort of scientific illiteracy. There's no claim that Pakicetus is the ancestor of whales. Pakicetus has the physical characteristics that the ancestors of whales would have possessed, but it is entirely possible that Pakicetus is a branch species that died out.
Okay.
Right? That it is not, in fact, part of the direct lineage towards whales.
Okay.
So, but it could be a sister species or whatever.
Okay.
So we don't make claims about direct ancestry based on the fossil record. So
Really?
This is again a straw man of the scientific position.
Do you not have a term called transitional fossil?
Yes.
Okay. When you say transitional fossil, that's a thing you're placing in the middle of something before it and something after it, right?
No.
That's not what it is?
A transitional fossil is a fossil that has transitional characteristics between two end members.
That's what I just said.
But that does not imply or require that particular fossil or indeed that particular species went on to produce later species.
Okay.
It could have been. There are multiple choices here.
Okay.
Right. It's not a case that it has to be.
I understand.
One or that one.
I understand, but the question wasn't whether it could be. The question is, what's your methodology for determining it is in fact or not?
We don't on the basis of fossils. We don't make that determination on the basis of fossils.
Great. Okay, cool. So there's one thing that you actually can't do when you look at fossils, which is based on just looking at them, you can't actually determine whether they are in fact an ancestor that splits off and actually eventually produces something that looks similar to, bigger, smaller, or whatever. So then if you say something came from something else in the ancient past, if it's not fossils in similarity and phenotype that you're determining something is in fact a past ancestor, what are you using to determine that?
Well, you can use so We don't generally make those claims about anything. So I'm not certain I understand this question.
Wow.
Because we don't make those claims about past organisms.
Really? Didn't you just said there's a universal common ancestor?
Yes.
Okay. Does it common ancestor? Does that mean they're just similar, or one actually starts the process?
Can you point me to where that is? The last universal common ancestor?
No, because it's made up. So the thing is, if I grant it, however many millions of years ago, what I'm asking you is not when it is, Tony. Focus. I'm asking you to say something's the ancestor of something today. Does it follow that the thing you're referring to as an ancestor had some divergence from it that eventually consecutively accumulates divergence, successive generations, and then leads to the current thing today? Is that what ancestor means? Okay.
Yes, that's what ancestor means.
So I'm going to ask you again, if there's something you find in the past, however you age it, if it's not anatomy that you're looking at similarity in its bone structure and phenotype, if it's not that you're determining that in fact is an ancestor of this thing today, what are you using as a methodology to determine it is?
We're not asserting that anything we found in the fossil record is necessarily an ancestor of modern humans or any other modern animal.
So then how do you... Sorry, go ahead.
So again, so we see a species that has characteristics that are transitional. We know that there is at least one such species. Okay, so this fills a gap in the fossil record. Okay. But we don't necessarily claim that ancestry must follow through the fossils that we found.
Okay, so the thing you found you had in your opener, the thing that looks human-like but also kind of looks ape-like, it shares similarities of both. That's anatomy, right? We're looking at?
Yes.
Okay, so when you in your opener brought that up, are you telling me in the audience that thing you brought up, because of the similarities in anatomy, are you saying that it leads us to believe that that's a previous type of sort of like hybrid ancestor of both our previous ancestors and us? Is that what you're claiming?
I'm suggesting that it is a common ancestor, that it has common ancestry with us, which is to say that it is descended from a branch, and we are descended from the same branch, even though the point of divergence may have been further up the tree. Okay,
so at least with that one, you're looking at pure anatomy and coming to the conclusion of common ancestry.
I think actually, I'm not. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So
again, I'm not. So.
Yeah. So if that's the case, if you go back further and you find something that necessarily has to be dissimilar to our anatomy, but you also have to claim, just like the Pakicetus claim is that there is a wolf-like structure on the beaches of Normandy, and eventually it starts diverging, and the divergent classes dip their toes and eventually make their way into the water, resulting in some ultimate divergent into a whale, which, by the way, must still be diverging or moving to some other place, because it's possible the whale is actually on its way back to land under the evolutionary view. Now, Tony, if you look at this collection of bones, then you're coming to the conclusion, against what you said before, nobody makes the claim based on anatomy of ancestor. You just admitted that you did that with the bones.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did. So
no, I didn't.
Okay, let me finish. So if the bones you brought up in your opener are some sort of hybrid mix of ape-like, chimp-like animal and a human, and you're going, look how similar, there's crossover traits in anatomy. Interesting. So it is an ancestor. My question still stands.
That's not what I said.
It is what you said. So if
no, it's not.
It surely is.
You're just lying.
I just asked you if it's an ancestor. You said yes.
No, I didn't.
What?
And you can't just lie about it.
Rewind
you
it.
don't even listen to what I say.
I do want to.
What?
Okay, so actually, let's back the truck up. PhD Tony's saying, hey, you know, wait, there's a misunderstanding.
Yes. What I said was Ardipithecus, referring to the particular example from my presentation, which was Ardipithecus ramidus, what I said was Ardipithecus ramidus and humans share a common ancestor.
Okay.
That is not the same thing as saying Ardipithecus is our ancestor.
Okay, so the Ardipithecus, the thing you brought up, is not, you don't know if it's our ancestor, but it comes from something, maybe, that converges to whatever the ancestor is, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if that's a claim that there's an ancestor between the Ardipithecus and the human being, what is it you would use if you thought you found one? What methodology would you use to determine it was in fact an ancestor?
I am unaware of any methodology apart from genetic testing that would conclusively demonstrate that anything you find in the fossil record is necessarily an ancestor of modern humans.
Would you call that synonymous with unfalsifiable?
No.
Okay, why not?
Because because you can very much falsify evolution.
No.
You could, if for instance, you found rabbit remains in the Cambrian or alongside Ediacaran life forms, that would disprove evolution.
Yep.
If you found fossil remains of griffins, that would falsify evolution. Okay. So there are a number of techniques for falsifying evolution. That this is and your claim that just because there are areas of uncertainty, therefore the entire thing is pseudoscience.
Well,
shut up.
You're so mad you lost the debate, dude. You lost, bro.
Just because there is uncertainty over whether or not a particular species in the fossil record is necessarily a direct ancestor of humans does not invite the conclusion that therefore evolution is a pseudoscience. Further, Jim Bob's claim that it's not a scientific theory is absolutely absurd, and the vast, the
blah 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 blah,
almost the entirety of the scientific literature and scientific institutions violently disagree with him, and him with literally no understanding even of what a clade consists of, let alone what orogeny is or any of the other.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
I want to give you a chance to
I'm just enjoying his idiocy at the moment, but I'll wind up in a second.
I do want
to
unbelievable,
his complete nescience, his complete scientific illiteracy, and his inability to correctly compose or understand answers
Come
when
on.
he gets
Time.
that he's going up against the scientific institutions. He's just wrong, and he's fucking lying.
We'll go back to Jim Bob. I want to give Jim Bob comparable time to respond.
Yeah, so everything you just said, nothing changes the fact that I just exposed a massive problem in your view. The entire paradigm collapsed right in front of your face, which is why you got so mad and upset. And you should be mad and upset because it's your worldview collapsing in front of everybody's eyes. Now, the problem with your view is that evolution as a theory, which it's not because it didn't even make its way through the scientific method with you. You couldn't even walk it through the scientific method, dude. The problem with your view, Tony, is I just exposed that the entire view of evolution rests on this idea of common ancestry. And you, in front of all these people tonight, admitted that the particular aspect called common ancestry is unfalsifiable. And what you did in response is instead of owning up to it, you moved to a different category of evolution, broadened it, and you said evolution.
Hello,
no,
everyone.
evolution is based on a model, and the model inside the model, there's an assumption of common ancestry. And I just got you to admit that it's unfalsifiable. You can't actually use a methodology to determine common ancestry or not. And yet the entirety of the paradigm rests on this notion that there are groups of populations, there are clades of populations, there are subcategories of populations that all divert from a common source out and spread out wider, right, and become other things through this process, right, this consecutive process, right? The problem is you can't falsify it, you can't verify it, you can't falsify it, and all you have, this entire debate from the opening till now, is a story that you yourself admitted you cannot even verify. It's an assumption, and I wrecked all the assumptions one by one, Tony. You shouldn't even be debating evolution. You should stick to gaming and debating flat Earth. You got cooked tonight.
Yeah, it's quite common for the counter-science participants to declare themselves the victors, just like a 6-year-old in the playground. May I share my screen for a moment?
Sure. Folks, if you haven't seen it, that Facebook page that you see at the bottom right of your screen just launched. It's our Modern Day Debate Clips Facebook page. Do check it out. It's pinned at the top of the chat. Do encourage you, please give us a little pity follow over on Facebook. We're just getting this little page started. Ready for you, Tony.
Sorry, I'll try that again. Sorry, I think I screwed that up.
It was showing.
Super chat.
Okay, I'll try it again.
Pay your taxes,
Okay,
people.
Let's try back with this. So here, for instance, we can see a confirmation of common ancestry through the propagation of endogenous retroviruses. Here, for instance, contrary to my opponent's claim, is the Baum et al. Paper from 2016 that scientifically tested universal common ancestry and statistically excluded the rival explanations. And we can go on. These were in my presentation. Jimbob has conveniently ignored all of the scientific data, the peer-reviewed scientific data supporting, that attempted to falsify common ancestry and failed to. So the claim that common ancestry is unfalsifiable is itself just a barefaced lie. Jimbob knows it's a barefaced lie because I presented the evidence in my opening presentation, and now he's lying to you and saying that he's demonstrated that it's an unfalsifiable hypothesis. It isn't an unfalsifiable hypothesis. We can use genetic testing and statistical techniques to determine whether or not common ancestry is plausible and is consistent with the data. It is. Rival explanations are not.
Let me just double check you're not on mute. Are you, Jimbob?
Yeah.
He is on mute.
Pardon me. There you go, Jimbob.
No, the thing you're bringing up, you're looking at retroviruses. The problem with evolution, as I pointed to, is that the claim of evolution actually goes way before any of these similarities in genes or in viruses inside sections of genes, because something came before the chimp or the ape or anything else that you're going to throw in there in the timeline of humanity. There's something way back in time that the human it comes forth from, right, from this process that looks nothing like the human, acts nothing like the human, doesn't have a retrovirus. So pointing to the similarity between where a location of a retrovirus is shows nothing other than two things have similar traits, just like you do with fossils. Look, the bones are similar. That doesn't actually tell us or justify the claim of common ancestry. That just shows that things are similar. The whole night I've asked you, how do you jump from looking at things that are similar to this process you assume occurs where one thing diverges and creates another thing and diverges and eventually winds up as something that it totally wasn't before, right? You haven't been able to do that. So you can't, this is a trick for evolution proponents. They like to look at evolution in a really like a snapshot, like a Polaroid. Human beings. And you ask a simple question: what comes before this ancestor that you're assuming? And then they go, I don't want to talk about abiogenesis. Why? Because they know that the further you go back in their deep time analysis of biology, they're going to have to arbitrarily pick a time where their first group of population existed magically that they can't account for, and everything's downstream from that. Well, nothing you said, Tony, actually justifies the mechanistic claim of evolution. You have not explained how mechanically a liver gets produced from random mutation. You have not produced a mechanistic explanation biologically how specifically what happens in random mutation that sets a Pakicetus off into a divergent route toward a whale. Nothing you said is actually justified. It's just a story. It happened. What's your idea? What about creationism? That's all you're doing, man. You have so many problems in your paradigm, and I already got you to admit, right? If you're now claiming that you can verify common ancestry, you can't do it. I can demonstrate that you can't do it further down. That's why you cope with the retrovirus, because you know something comes way before humans under your view that looks nothing like humans and acts nothing like humans, that doesn't have a retrovirus, and you still have to argue that's an ancestor. You have to argue that from the evolutionary paradigm, that we have an ancestor, a common ancestor. The problem is you can't falsify the claim.
So we can demonstrate using endogenous retroviruses that humans and fish have common ancestors. And Jimbob's, yes, That was what the paper I just put up demonstrated, that there are endogenous retroviruses that are shared between humans and fish. And you may not like it. Tough titties. It sucks to be wrong, doesn't it? So you're claiming that because we can't go, that we don't have genetic evidence of endogenous retroviruses from before the fish and humans diverged, that all of a sudden there's some problem with evolution. If evolution can explain and is consistent with the emergence of Homo sapiens from fish, I don't see why it's in any way problematic to extend it further back. It seems we're on safe extrapolatory territory.
Yeah, extrapolation fallacy territory. Now, the problem with what you just said is that you just said we emerged. That the term emergent, by the way, is that a biological term, Tony?
No.
Okay, so why are you using the term emerge if it's not a biological term?
Because words aren't specific to particular fields of science.
Okay, so when you say emerge in the realm of biology and evolution, what does that mechanically mean?
That mechanically means that the species accumulated changes from its original population to produce the modern form its modern form.
Oh, okay, so when you say it emerge, is that to say it's a universal category?
That question, I'm sure you thought was meaningful in your head.
That's not an answer.
Yes, because your question is meaningless.
That's a cope. So if there's a thing called humans, do you agree that you agree there's a thing called humans?
I agree that there is a category of organisms called that we colloquially refer to as humans.
Okay, is that category a universal category? Humans.
What does that mean?
It means
category.
It means that the group you call a human is a universal thing. When I say human, I'm not referring to a dog.
What does universal mean in this context?
It means that it's a group that you refer to of particulars that make up a category itself. That is itself. It has its own identity. Human. So the identity of a human is not the same the category of a shark, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the category of human that you're referring to as a universal thing emerged from something it wasn't. That's your term. But also, your view is that it's changing, right?
Your slackness of language here is absolutely astonishing.
Dude.
You've got to learn to ask questions. The word universal means either of or pertaining to the universe, or that it applies category. Universal category is a meaningless.
That's a contradiction. So look, if it's the case that humans emerged in a biological process, right? They emerged. That means there's a moment in which the category human emerged, became itself. No. Okay, so humans didn't emerge then. P and not P. No. Another contradiction.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
So again, the existence of gradients. That we can say at this point.
This is Hinduism.
At this point in time, T1, there were no humans. At this point in time, T2, there are humans. At some point in between, this is the what is it? The middle value theorem. At some time in between, there must have been a transition
based on the bones,
where there was
as you can see by the bones.
That doesn't mean that
based on the bones.
Based
on the bones.
Furthermore, because it depends on your criteria, it depends on what your observables are, and further, it depends, and different people may have different standards for measuring these things.
Okay, cool. So your first statement, P, was humans emerged in this process called evolution. You said humans emerged. In your next statement, you said there's actually no time where humans emerged.
No, that's not what I said.
It is.
What you said is that there's a specific time
at
which this occurred. No, that's not what I said.
How do you say? How do you say it?
What I said was that there's a gradient, and that there was a point in time at which there were no humans. There's a later point in time. There's a later point in time at which there are humans.
Okay.
This implies the crossing of the through the middle value.
What is a point in time?
Whether or not that can be, I don't claim that can.
What is a point in time?
And you're interrupting me again while I'm in the middle of speaking. So I'm going to finish my point, and I'm not going to respond to your questions until I have finished speaking.
Blah blah blah.
I do not need to identify a specific time.
Okay.
Nor do I need to. All I need to say is that this time it's like the emergence of language. There was a time at which nobody spoke Italian. Then there was a time at which people did speak Italian. That does not mean that there is a specific point in time at which there was a first person who spoke Italian.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
That's not how anything works.
Let me use that analogy real quick, because the thing in question isn't the language. The thing in question is what the language is referring to. Now, if I refer to a human and the name of a human changes, the universal of what a human maintains the same thing, no matter what sound comes out of your mouth. So again, the question, Tony, you just said this. You said shut up. There's a point in time.
Why? You don't shut up when I'm talking.
There's a point in time, your words, where humans emerged. Now you said it doesn't mean that there's a point in time where humans emerge. If you make the statement in the evolutionary view that there is that humans emerged, that's a claim that happens in time. And so now you've both said humans emerged, right? Is that past tense? Or, Tony, how do you know from the evolutionary view humans aren't still emerging? How do you know that, Tony?
In fact, humans are still emerging.
So they didn't emerge.
I never said that they weren't. And even the definition of you brought up the term transitional fossil. I didn't introduce that term because every species, every fossil is transitional. Oh. Everything is in the process. Everything is in the process of becoming something else.
Oh, really?
This still applies to humans.
Okay, cool. So a human, it could be on its way to being something else. And when would you know that was the case?
Once sufficient differences have accumulated.
What do you mean? What sufficient differences? That says nothing.
It means that change is incremental and infinitesimal. It will take time for us to be able to point to differences.
What differences?
I can't predict the future, mate.
So stop making claims.
I don't know what differences there will be. And the fact that you think that this is some sort of intelligent question again goes back to just how much of an idiot you are.
Yeah, that's a fallacy.
I can't predict the future. I don't know what the changes will be.
So you can't justify.
I don't know what the time scale. I don't know what the time frame over which they will accumulate is. So this is an entirely speculative question, and you're saying you can't answer it specifically.
Yeah.
Great catch, mate. Well done.
Yeah, stop making claims you can't justify then. All you said is humans are emerged. That's past tense. And I go, are we still emerging? You say, yeah, we're still emerging. And I go, how do you know? You said humans will eventually, we're always in flux, changing, and we're on our way to something else, right? And I said, I simply asked a question based on your statement, Tony. I said, how do you know when that is? And you said, changes. And I said, which changes? Then you spurged out and called me an idiot. Retire.
Because you are. Demonstrably.
But you didn't answer the question.
Well, yes, because the question is ill-defined. That you can string words together and put a question mark at the end of them doesn't make it an intelligent or scientifically well-formed question. Okay,
ill-defined. You mean when I ask you, how do you know when something is no longer itself from the evolutionary view? You say over a lot of time.
That's an ill-formed question.
Hold on. Over a lot of time, right? Let's take something more particular. You said in your opener or after the opener that the eye was a finished product. Now, is the eye a finished product?
No.
Okay. Could the eye be on its way to being a liver?
No.
Why not?
Because the eye possesses none of the functions that would be necessary for it to become a liver.
Could it develop the sensitivities and functions to become a liver under a random mutation view?
I don't think that would be a meaningful. I don't even think that that's a meaningful question.
It's not meaningful to look at particulars in the body and extrapolate your claims of groups of animals that.
I am unable.
Hold on, I'm still talking. I'm still talking. Hold on. Keep quiet a second. So the question is whether or not the functions of the eye or the liver, right, because they develop from random mutation, you have to hold that they developed accidentally, right?
No.
Okay. So did they develop purposefully?
I would not suggest that, no.
Okay, so what's the in-between between purpose, intentional toward functionality, and accidental? Is there a third option?
Yes.
What is it?
It's systematic. It's a system response it's a system response to external selection pressure.
Okay, system response. Are the responses accidental and random, or are they purposeful?
The question again
Unbelievable, this guy.
Characterizes the system.
Dude, a system.
Systems don't have
Tell me one system that's not functional.
Have purposes.
So is a system defined as something that's functioning?
It is defined as something that has a function.
Okay, can you define function without using the word purpose?
Yes.
Do it.
Okay. A function is a capacity to undertake certain tasks.
Oh, purposeful tasks? Dude, you're out of your league here. You're out of your league.
I just gave the definition without using the word purpose.
Are tasks purposes?
Not. Again, you are
All right, move on. You're getting, dude. This is pathetic.
So he asks a question,
this is pathetic.
And then as soon as he starts getting an answer that isn't a monosyllable, he starts throwing a tantrum and trying to talk over me. And you did a good job there for a moment, James, of sort of muting him when he did that.
Aww.
And I'll ask you to do it, and I'll ask you to do it again. If he continues on showing his juvenile and childish approach to communication. So the idea of a purpose, that implies some form of cognition, that something occurs on purpose implies some sort of intellectual process by which a need is identified and then that need is fulfilled. Systems do not operate in that way.
Okay.
Systems operate in response to the forces that are applied to them to produce outcomes. The outcome that they produce is not dictated by purpose or any form of cognition. And any attempt to even ask these questions is an attempt to mischaracterize and derail the conversation.
Okay, get over to JimBob, and we're going to go into the Q&A shortly, folks. Thanks for your questions.
So yeah, when I point to function, the problem, and I demonstrated just by asking him, can you actually define function without assuming some sort of purpose? Task would be synonymous with purpose. Now, he just argued that you can't have purpose without a mind. Well, that's question begging, first of all. Second of all, when we look at something like the liver and the heart, from Tony's paradigm, if he goes in, God forbid, and needs something at the hospital, and he asks the doctor, what's going on with this organ? And the doctor says, it's not functioning properly, right? Tony here, to be consistent, would say, what are you talking about? This thing doesn't have any purpose or function. It just reacts to stimuli and does a thing. That is to say, the liver or the brain or the heart or anything else, the spleen, shout out to my spleens, anything else you point to in the body, that body, when it's actually filtering toxins, let's say the liver, it's actually not, doesn't have purpose to the body. It's not a purpose. It's an accidental response stimuli that just accidentally, effectively processes toxins and facilitates them exiting the body. No function involved. No purpose. It's just in pure reactivity. Now, this is perfect because this is my favorite part, and I'm so glad this is how we're ending. From the view that Tony has, not only is the heart purposeless, doesn't actually serve a proper task-oriented function, it's accidental. His brain, a perfect demonstration tonight that he believes his brain is just reacting to stimuli. There's no purpose to thinking from the evolutionary view. There's not some reason we have reason. It's an accidental feature of pure chemical reactions and biological clashing of molecules. Now, there's nothing more absurd than holding the view of accidentalism. And no, he did not provide a third, right? And you could use this on any of these guys. There's only two options. Either life itself at the molecular level or the body level or any other level demonstrates function. To say it's dysfunctional assumes there's function. The only alternative is accidentalism. Now, Tony is basically what happens to your brain on accidentalism. Kids, don't do accidentalism. You don't want to end up like Tony.
This is a good...
No. The claim that that accidentalism versus purpose is a true dichotomy is just an assertion.
Prove it.
From my opponent that has well, I did. So chemicals, is there a purpose to the chemical processes that occur within a rain puddle? No, there isn't. But chemical processes do occur in rain puddles. So the very idea that sort of mud forms or clays form that has some purpose, that's absolutely untrue. And at no point did I assert that anything was accidental. I asserted that systems were responding to the various forces applied to them. Now, you can say colloquially that an organ is not functioning properly, but that is from an anthropocentric viewpoint where you want your organs to support life. But if something happens, if for instance you're infected with bacteria, or there is some function, for instance, because you consume too much alcohol, like my interlocutor's mother, then
weird.
Then you have the if we're going to be accusing one another of drug-addled brains, I figure it's fair enough. That is just a response of the system to to an adverse or a favorable condition that you have applied to it. It is not. There is no purpose to this. Humans and other animals and other organisms are machines designed to replicate and to persist. That is their design. That's what they're designed for. Well, designed is what evolutionary pressure has driven us towards. I can see Jimbob's amusement at that.
Yeah. Okay, so all of that nonsense, including insulting my mother for some reason, I dare you to meet me in person and insult my mother to my face. I dare you.
Sure.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
James.
I will find you. I will physically find you.
All right. We will. I will arrange the boxing match.
Okay.
It will be tremendous.
So Tony, you don't believe there's such a thing as a dysfunctional liver?
Yes, I do.
You just presuppose function.
From the anthropocentric viewpoint, that it should be sustaining the life of the possessor of the liver. Yes.
Okay, cool. Does a liver have a purpose?
I would not say so.
Okay, that's all I need. Does your brain have a purpose?
No.
Yeah, exactly what I needed from you. Brains don't have purposes. Good job.
This is a good opportunity to go to the Q&A. Folks, if you have questions, feel free to fire them into the old live chat. A couple of quick housekeeping things.
You guys hear that?
Folks,
brains don't have purposes.
DebateCon 6, Nashville, Tennessee. You don't want to miss it. Andrew Wilson, Made by Jimbob, Jake of Rattlesnake TV, Dr. Richard Carrier. It is going to be amazing. So grab your tickets at the link in the description box. I'm going to pin that link at the top of the chat. You don't want to miss it, folks. Get out there, take some chances, do some crazy things. If you're like me, it's tempting to stay home and watch 90s movies all the time. But you got to get out there. You got to live a little. So come on out to DebateCon, meet Jimbob, Andrew Wilson, Dr. Richard Carrier, and more. With that, thank you very much for your questions. We have a special old friend in the chat. We'll get to his. I'm very excited for that. An honest doubter says, whether design or evolution can both concede we are more closely related to simians than any other creature on Earth. Both, what are the implications of this fact? You might have to define simians for them, although I can do that as well.
So we're most closely, so based on genetic evidence, we're most
this guy fucking mutes me, dude.
To chimpanzees, and chimpanzees are more closely related to humans than they are to any of the other great apes. This suggests, from an evolutionary point of view, that humans and chimpanzees share a more recent common ancestor than do humans or chimps with any of the other great apes.
Jimbo, thoughts? Oh, you're muted. Sorry about that. I don't even think I muted you that time. You mute yourself. How polite.
Yeah, the question is kind of like if the supposition is that everything's related, then saying one thing's closer related than another thing doesn't really play into or explain what evolution is claiming. So like if everything's similar simply because of phenotypical similarities or genotypical similarities, and you say we're related to a banana very distantly, to me, if the assumption is we're all related because we're all made up of genetic similarity, structural similarity, then nothing is actually being distinguished. It's like a monistic view, which is funny because evolution is definitely mirrors quite well a Hindu view of life, which is it's kind of fascinating to look at the similarities between those two.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Jimbo Jumbo says, shout out to, quote, Worldview Debates, unquote, on Discord. Join us, folks, in before Tony changing face color, Madrid. Let's see. I don't know Spanish. This one from, do appreciate your super chat. Cake Hans says, unless you travel back in time and shelter Jimbob from creationism, explain molecular biology and chemistry perfectly to Jimbob. He refuses your statement.
Yeah, that's pretty much an accurate summary of the debate.
Well, I would push back on that. I didn't ask for some extreme view. I ask for just a basic view with basic things. So if the claim is random mutation produces a liver, and I go, how do you do that? And the answer is, well, you already have a liver. That's how you do it. It just gets better. Well, that doesn't answer the question. And if the claim is simply that random mutation produces the populations we see today, which is a phenomenon, there are different populations. If that's downstream from random mutation, it's totally fair for the person who is internally critiquing the other one to ask the question. Now, just because you guys think it's too big and crazy to tackle, and that's your out, fine. That just looks bad optically.
This one coming.
I would respond to that it is idiotic to ask that question in a YouTube debate.
Okay.
If you were genuinely interested in the answer to that, you would be talking to
not you.
Molecular biologists.
Yeah, not you.
Yes, that's right.
So
you would have sought out a subject matter expert, and you'd be talking to them in a formal setting.
Yeah.
Instead, you're doing this self-aggrandized attention gathering.
Oh gosh, this guy.
In order to advance your religious propaganda.
What? What religious propaganda did I bring in today?
You didn't bring in any.
So shut the fuck up.
No.
Shut up. Shut up, dude. You're a lying snake.
No, so I get
you lying little snake. Shut your mouth. No, shut your mouth, Tony.
You've been on here previously.
Oh, shut up.
You have introduced plenty of religious propaganda.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
The claim and this is
what's wrong with it?
Transparently.
What's wrong with it?
This is transparently.
Yeah. What's wrong with it?
Part of an ongoing campaign.
What's wrong with it?
Against anti.
Cool.
Let's go to the next one.
Cool. What's wrong with it, Tony?
I hate to do this.
What's wrong with it?
I gotta mute you guys. I have to go to the next one. Thank you very much for this question coming in from folks. If you haven't yet, hit that like button. Melee the like button. Handsome Cat says Jimbob's theory is Yahweh breathed into clay.
No, I don't take that as a theory. Religious claims about origin are not scientific claims. That's a category error. You should be lobotomized forcefully.
Cake Hans says, Dr. James, I love your channel and making debates easy to watch. Thank you for your kind words. Says, thank you so much. PhD Tony, when I see your debates coming up, I make time especially to watch. Please never stop debating. You're awesome. Wow.
Well, that's very kind. I will remind Jimbob that there are a great many legal jurisdictions where admonitions to violence are actually illegal.
Oh.
This one from Handsome Cat says the discovery of DNA confirmed the theory of evolution, debunking Jimbob's theory that an ancient Jewish deity breathed into dust, creating man.
I never proposed a theory. I would never call that a theory. So that's the second time. I'm glad you're getting super chats, but it's category error again.
K. Khan says, Jim Bob, science can't be true unless have a time machine to take me back to observe exactly the time when something different occurred. Argues like Wi-Fi gospel and hard solipsism, small chain reactions, dumbass.
That was totally incoherent. Not even a question. But no, if you're looking at proper science, it's admitted. Even the greatest of thinkers, right? The greatest of thinkers admit to this, that there is a certain scale at which you just can't introduce and know the cause of things. You have to go off a hunch. And it's just one of the things that limit science. Like this isn't a controversial statement, right? Copernicus knew this way back, that astronomy itself can't furnish a proper viable hypothesis because you don't have access. You have to do a lot of guesswork. That isn't to say that a guess can't be right. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying that what's ultimately the arbiter between two competing hypotheses when you actually share the same data and you don't have access to experiment? And I really didn't get an answer to that question tonight. I hold that you just can't. Too bad. I'm sorry. It doesn't make something false or true. It just makes the claim that you have access to that arbiter false. You don't have access to the arbiter. It's a massive assumption. That's it.
That's an incredibly long answer to something he claimed was incoherent.
Who cares?
He used the subject matter expert on incoherence. So I guess we should.
What? That doesn't even make sense. There's nothing inconsistent, you dumbass old person, that between someone doing an incoherent statement and me charitably translating into a question and a response that's lengthy. It doesn't matter. You're an idiot.
We have to go to the next one.
You're the subject matter expert on that too. So
Braden McLean says, Jim Bob, did I read this one? Forgive me. They said, why is it that you believe that a magic wizard yelled life into the world? C, a question can be a straw man.
Because I was determined to, by your view.
This one from Kay Khan says, Jim Bob wants yes or no answers from in-depth science questions.
Co-parter.
When he doesn't get that, he assumes he's right. Doesn't understand science at all.
Nothing argued. All meta-analysis like we heard all night. Dumb people. Just dumb people.
But phenomenally accurate.
This one from Jordan Lofgren says, Tony, is evolution ongoing? If yes, was there a time where humans were less human? If yes, which humans now are less human than other humans?
So the question makes no sense. Is there a time when humans were less human?
Yeah.
No. By definition, humans can't be less human because they're human. So that's an incoherent question. Do you mean cladistically, were there ancestors of humans that were less human than modern humans? I can answer yes to that, but that doesn't mean that any modern humans are less human than any other modern humans. That doesn't follow. So there's a failure of basic logic there.
Well, Tony, I have a follow-up. Do you consider us apes?
Yes.
Do you think George Floyd is an ape?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think are we less ape or are they less human?
Who are you referring to when you
apes.
say they?
Apes, like in the zoo. Well, no, in the zoo, they're obviously.
You mean the other great apes?
Yeah, other great apes. Are we less ape or are they less human, or is it both?
So no, they're less. They are not human. We are apes.
Okay, so they're apes, we're apes. They're just not human. So we're
yes.
Okay, and there's a moment in time in the future where we might see something that splinters from humans that's not exactly human.
It will cladistically be human, but yes, it's entirely possible that that you will see branches of humans. Yeah.
And then I guess the question Jordan was asking, like, if we keep going down that divergent path, is there some point in time where you declare it's no longer human, or is human now the? Again,
we've been through this. This is an entirely speculative question that I cannot answer since I have no data on which to answer it.
Okay.
So it's a pointless and ridiculous thing. And I explained this to you about 20 minutes ago, and you're still back.
Okay, take your pills. It's okay.
This one coming in from Big League Drew says, I once raised a school of sea monkeys. None of them evolved. Boom, got them. I don't know. Serious.
I hope that that's a facetious quote and it's a facetious comment, but whatever.
This one from Even Lore, it says, it has been said that cell fossils have been found when the atmosphere was developed enough to destroy most meteorites. Dr. Tony, what is your opinion?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
They said, it has been said that cell fossils have been found when the atmosphere was developed enough to destroy most meteorites.
Yeah, I think what he's referring to here is that Earth's atmosphere was very thin at the beginning and didn't destroy as many incoming meteorites, and that we have evidence of cell biology as soon as the atmosphere does get thick enough. Yes.
You got it. This one from Do Appreciate It. Not So Sunny Extra says, Tony, what is the last common ancestor between us and chimps? And how did the first offspring of said ancestor procreate if their existence is due to random mutation and are reproductively isolated?
Well, they're not reproductively isolated. So the first generation after the last universal, after the last ancestor between us and chimpanzees, their offspring were not incapable of interbreeding. That doesn't occur until rather later in the picture. So you've got a strange misunderstanding of the process involved.
Are you using the term universal ancestor?
Yeah, I corrected myself.
But is that
the last common ancestor?
Oh, common.
Of chimpanzees.
Okay. Okay, got you. I was just wondering.
Yeah, I misspoke. You're quite right.
This one coming in from Nephilim Free. Now, the reason this is interesting is because whether you agree with them or not, I've had my own little conflicts with Nephilim Free, but I have to say, Nephilim Free kind of started internet religion debates and evolution debates. No joke. I mean, Nephilim Free was there in like the earliest days, like 2006. So we do want to say thank you, Nephilim Free. And he was also 7 years ago one of the people that helped get Modern Day Debate off the ground. So thank you for that. He says he's real. He's not a legend. He's a real person. They say evolution was disproved by modern science. Tony, how do you like them apples, Tony? They say
yes. Well, I suggest that you take that up with every major scientific institution and every reputable scientific journal on the face of the planet.
Don't worry, he's not done. He says it is a fantasy pseudoscience. DNA proves design. It is prescriptive, functional, linguistic, compressed, specifying information. Tony.
Yeah, except that that's all bullshit because we can remove large sections of, for instance, mouse DNA and prove that it isn't functional because we still get the cloned mice with the more parsimonious genetic material are still capable of living and reproducing normally. So the idea that all DNA is functional has been disproven through this experiment, and the claim that the 50% of our DNA that we share with bananas is functional. I'd ask what common function there is between humans and banana plants that requires that much genetic material. Donnie's answer a couple of weeks ago that it's entirely regulatory in nature, that is incredibly inefficient coding. If that's the way God does his business, he's incredibly bad at it.
Now I want to clarify one thing, just because I know that Tony, you interpreted JimBob as implying that he would do some sort of physical harm to you. I only say this just because I want to clarify, because I'm like, I don't want someone thinking that, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable thinking that that was the case. I think what JimBob was saying more is like, you're just a keyboard warrior, you wouldn't say it to my face. So I do want to just be clear that I don't think he...
Yeah, I am not stating I'm going to do something. I said, if you want to talk so disgustingly about my mother, who is not relevant to this topic, at least come and do it to my face.
I find JimBob regularly annoying, but I just want to be clear. I don't think that he was threatening you. I just want to clear. So when I said I'll arrange the boxing match, I wasn't being serious. It was a joke.
Well, JimBob was the person who raised the subject of my neural faculties being impaired
I think so.
And I was invoking a mechanism by which his might have been impaired. Perhaps it was wrong to bring his mother into it, in which case I apologize.
I forgive you.
I'm sorry. I am sorry that I brought your mother into it.
I forgive you.
It was an inappropriate thing to do.
Thank you. I forgive you.
It's water under the bridge. I appreciate you both being so congenial with this. Believe it or not, I've heard like even like much just nasty things. I remember one time, let me tell you a story. Can I tell you? A certain Hunter Avalon was on, I feel so bad. Is that Nick, a certain gentleman named Nick told him, he just attacked his wife in a way that I was like, geez, it's all water under the bridge. That one maybe wasn't water under the bridge. I think they're still enemies, but this one, you guys will laugh. We'll laugh later.
Based on
Jordan
the bones,
says,
as you can see by the bones,
value.
or the bones. Based
Why
on the
would it be
bones,
wrong for me
based
to
on the
indoctrinate
bones,
people falsely with the idea that they do in fact have value?
Well, so that's a straw man. Being a human, a lot of the people whose companionship I quite like are also humans. I think that human well-being is something to be encouraged. Saying that humans are valueless is not anything I've ever said in this, and nor should it be interpreted as anything I've said, nor should anything I've said be interpreted as an argument against Christianity. Or indeed in this debate, as Jim Bob has pointed out multiple times, nothing in this debate is an argument against creationism and evolution as a post-creation event. I'm not anti-Christian, I'm not anti-religion, nor am I saying that humans are valueless. I think that every human should value themselves and should value the people around them. And I'm grateful to the audience, I'm grateful to you, and I'm grateful to Jim Bob for the debate. But nothing I say should be interpreted as in any way indicating that human life is valueless. That's not at all what I'm saying. Humans have, especially as a human, humans have intrinsic value and should be treated as such by default.
Wait, can I just ask a follow-up there about the propaganda? Because that's interesting to me. Like, if you were about well-being, if it were the case, Tony, where propaganda, whether it was religious or not, let's say you thought it was false. If that propaganda enhanced well-being, would you fight against the propaganda?
Well, it depends. It depends on how we're defining well-being. For instance, a lot of religious propaganda is being used to marginalize homosexuals, transsexuals. It's being used to deny women access to healthcare. All, for instance, that the statistics are in on this. All that making abortion illegal does is raise death rates. It doesn't reduce the number of abortions. All it does is kill people. So,
ironic.
My problem here is not with the religion itself, but some people who hold some religious views will try and impose as legislation laws that marginalize and victimize people, and that, to my mind, is not working towards people's benefit. So I don't concede. I also don't concede that counterfactual narratives are actually helpful. And again, I don't have any problem with saying, look, I've had a religious experience with a God. I believe there's God. I can't disprove that. What I do have a problem with people saying is, slavery was okay in the Bible, so it's okay now, or it was okay to kill the Amalekites, so it's okay to wipe out people now. It was okay to stone gay people in the Bible, therefore it's okay to marginalize them and victimize them now. Those are the arguments that I have difficulty with.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Tony's pal, Nephilim Free, says, evolution became a laughable myth in the 20th century, Tony, during which it was disproved by millions of discoveries. One such discovery is that polymerase is a product of its own translation, which proves special creation.
I challenge Nephilim Free to cite me the peer-reviewed article in which that conclusion is expressed. He won't be able to because it isn't.
Tony, do you think in the future there's going to be a branch of atheists who adopt a type of intelligent design, but not like a God version, but like more like a, I don't know, like a alien or like a simulation view? Like
certainly there are people. Certainly there are atheists who already hold those positions. So yeah, there are people who don't believe in God but believe that aliens. In fact, some of them, like Hoyle, for instance, though his was actually panspermia more than intelligent design. But certainly there are atheists who agree in simulation theory, in which case we are axiomatically designed by some sort of creator. So yeah, I think that certainly there are atheists who do take the intelligent design.
Would you argue against that? Like, if there was an atheist who was like intelligent design, but it's not theistic, would you debate against that person?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I would. I would argue, just as I've argued this evening, that the observational evidence does not support that conclusion. I would further argue that, for instance, simulation theory is as you were attempting to point, it's completely unfalsifiable and, in my view, unscientific, and just begs the question. So I would make that debate against an atheist making those points.
Mm-hmm.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Even Lord says, Dr. Coons, is it true that Max's old channel? Oh no. Max's old channel was created by a transponder atheist PDF file who got in trouble with the law for possession of CP. I don't know the details, so you have to ask Max. But I can tell you this.
I can answer.
Okay. But I can tell you this. Max is not a pervert. He's not a PDF. But Tony...
So for starters, it's not Max's old channel. It was the channel set up by somebody who has subsequently been convicted of a crime.
Oh, he's been convicted. Okay. I did not know that. So that sounds like it's pretty bad. No Way As Way in 1988 said, can Tony, let's see, trying to figure out what this even means. I honestly just don't know what are you saying grammatically? Wi-Fi Gospel says, Jimbob, do you have a certain question for Tony? BLM. Black Lives Matter. Wow.
I already asked that, Wi-Fi.
Goofy the Cat says, Alexa, remind me at 2, Dave has a small wiener. Who's Dave? And do either of you have Alexa?
Who's Dave?
No.
This one.
I don't know.
Poor
You thought I was
Dave.
having trouble following the debate. I think there are some people in the audience who are completely out.
Hey, he's under the influence of something. Question the answer says, how does evolution explain acts of selflessness? Ooh.
So there's an entire book dedicated to this called The Selfish Gene. So altruism does actually provide an evolutionary advantage to the species as a whole, and provides an evolutionary benefit to participants. If, for instance, you had a population in which everybody was a greedy, self-serving bastard, then an altruistic person who went out of their way to help other people, they would enjoy an enormous advantage. Conversely, if you had a population where everybody was completely selfless, then a greedy, self-serving bastard would have an evolutionary advantage. So there's evolutionary pressure towards there being a mix. But you see this throughout it's discussed in detail. As much as I disagree with Dawkins's recent positions on multiple things, it's a good book and people should read it.
What happens though, Tony, at the collective level? Like if there's a population itself that all have a cohesive view of their own identity, and another group comes in from an evolutionary view, it's not inconsistent for the one group to see that other group as an invasive species, so to speak, right? And so I wonder, from the evolutionary view, purely, not your own personal view, but from the evolutionary view alone, it wouldn't actually be right or wrong to do away with an invasive species, even if it shared a common traits as you, it looked like you and everything, right?
Yeah, so this is, we're on somewhat thorny territory, but yes, with animals, with non-human animals, they don't, they show some understanding of morality. They show some understanding of when they've done something naughty, when they've been guilty of something. But in general, yes, a social group that sees another social group, they will respond with, incredible violence to the approach of another group. Whether I have difficult and that's reasonable enough for animals. If we like to pretend that humans are better than that, then humans have to behave to a higher standard.
Yeah.
I would argue.
Yeah, because when you said I'm glad you hold that humans have value. Some people who are atheists just say, well, they just bite the bullet and say, no, I can't prove that, and I just believe it, and that's fine. But the reason I ask this is that if humans are a unique category of animal, but they're also sort of like a splinter from a previous type of animal, you said like general apes and things like this. We have expectations of each other as humans, but I'm wondering, what's the biological distinction between not fully human to fully human that suddenly gives us innate value from your view, not an evolutionary view, like your personal view?
Well, I mean, it's sort of, I don't, well, this is rather a thorny question to ask, because there are actually animals that I value quite highly. So my concept of value is not human specific.
Okay.
There are non-humans that I extend value to, and I'm not really in a position to draw the line, to sort of explain. But based on the genetic evidence we have, we know, for instance, that there was interbreeding between Denisovans and Neanderthals and modern humans, and we know that they must have had they must have coexisted, because we see their offspring and their offspring being raised. So there must have, even though they weren't modern humans, they were human enough for people to accept. And I mean, sort of, our brains are designed at a visceral level to identify threats, stuff that is different from us, stuff that doesn't look like us, and stuff that may be competitors. And we do that very, very well, and perhaps too well. And we need to sort of, I would argue that sort of conquering that impulse, that animalistic impulse that doesn't look like me, therefore all bets are off. We need to be better than that, and we need to impose sort of our rational minds and go, actually, we're not in direct competition for resources. So, let's put all those alarmist thoughts aside.
Well, the reason I asked is if there's a progression toward a category called human at which they have innate value, as you said, then under the evolutionary view, there might be a moment in the future where something derivative of a human goes back down to not having value. And I was just wondering if there was a threshold for you.
But from a human perspective, perhaps, but from their own perspective, certainly not. So, for instance, let's look at AIs. As being an example, not necessarily evolutionarily devised, but if AIs start becoming a threat, even though sort of morally they may be able to argue for personhood, they may be able to argue for rights, if they become a sufficient threat, or if they perceive humans as a sufficient threat, then humans and machines are going to compete. So yeah. But each side is going to have their own internal value system, and they're each going to reject the value system of the other.
This is a good opportunity to go to the next question. Thank you very much for it. Coming in from Question the Answers. It says, how does evolution explain it? Oh, we got that. K. Khan says, Jimbob, I dogged you in all my super chats. Good faith you responded in detail to all my questions. I appreciate that. Thanks. Handsome Cat says, did Jimbob believe we are mammals but not apes?
Mammals? Well, I mean, we didn't really get into it, but I would argue, which I've done before, that that taxonomy from an evolution perspective is kind of arbitrary and based on the time we're looking at. And the wider the lens that you look at evolution from its claims, the more blurry things like species and things get. And this isn't some creation-tard view. This is a view that I've gotten a fair amount of evolution proponents who are well-versed in evolution to admit. Yeah, species gets a little bit blurry. These groupings that we hold as universally themselves are still kind of flux when you zoom out. So the question itself kind of smuggles in terms that I don't really hold to ultimately. Like we just categorically call mammals mammals, but it's meaningless from the evolutionary view because it could be in flux and evolving to something that's not that from these divergent paths, right? So.
Well, but you can't. I would argue that you can't really evolve out of being a mammal, but maybe you can.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Handsome Cat says, we got that. Clicker says, based on the bones, I would say this. Oh, let's see. They say Tony
based on the bones. As you can see by the bones.
John.
Or the bones. Based on the bones.
Yeah.
Based on the bones.
Clade as our earliest common ancestor. Wait, who's John? What's going on?
And by definition, yes, we're in the same clade as our earliest common ancestor. Assuming, and for the benefit of the question, we're assuming that, of course, that there is a universal common ancestor.
You got it. Now, by the way, as a quick side note, Tony, have you ever gone toe to toe with the man, the ghost, the phantom, Nephilim Free?
No.
Whoa! Just saying, that's interesting. Goofy the Cat says, hey, Google, remind me at 4 Dave eats poo-poo. Wow. Okay, I think that I've always underestimated.
I think Dave and John are having a war in the chats via super chats.
Oh, now I actually get it. Okay. But yeah, want to say, folks, thank you for tuning in. Both of our guests are linked in the description. Folks, even if you disagree, there's value from hearing it straight from them rather than a paraphrase of someone that's maybe doing a straw man.
I will, sorry to interrupt, don't go to my channel if you want evolution content, because you won't find any there.
But you will find some when he debates Nephilim Free.
Right.
Now that could be, but yeah, for real, YouTube has a cool history, but want to say thanks to our guests. Made by Jimbob and Tony make this debate fun. They make this channel fun. Our guests are the lifeblood of the channel. So want to say thank you guys for coming on. It's been a treasure, a true joy to host you tonight.
Thank you. And thanks to Tony, and no hard feelings. I'm very aggressive during debates. It's just, that's how I do it.
Yeah. So do I, but I want to apologize backstage, but I also want to do it in public again. I apologize for the comment about your mother.
No worries.
That was entirely out of line. And thank you, James, for having us on, and thank you, Jimbob, for the debate.
Of course.
My pleasure to get to host you guys. So thank you guys. Folks, stick around. I'll be back letting you know about upcoming debates here at Debate, Modern Day Debate, and I'll be back in 12.5 seconds. Thanks, guys. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And genuine apologies again.
No
Jimbob.
problem, Tony. Don't worry about it, man. All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. We fight. We win. I win. You lose. I win. You. Am I still streaming? Thank you so much. Yes, bring in the taxes, everybody. I'm trying to find, guys. I'm trying to find the good debaters. Where are they? I don't know, ma'am. I don't know. How am I supposed to know? I don't know. 15 more, y'all. 15 minutes. Let's go. At least have me meet my goal for dealing with it. He feels bad about his comment. Well, I mean, I'm totally for like aggressive stooping low. I mean, who do you think I am? Some sort of angel? What do you think? I'm Chris Angel or something? I'm not. But so what do you guys think? I thought that went exactly how I thought it was going to go, which is the same as last time. I got him to bite some crazy bullets. I think that was the first time I got someone to admit that the specific task of thinking was accidental. The specific task of trying to falsify or verify something called the common ancestry was actually impossible to do. That's amazing. Who knew? Tony evolved to propagate fallacies. At least got some good sound clips, that's for sure. Never the mom insult. Yeah, never the mom. Hoodle you daddle in the house, yo. Shout out from the Crucible. Thank you, Captain. Andy, $10. Different opponent, same stories. It's always the same. The good thing about all this is that I start thinking of new Stream Deck assets for you guys. That's the real fruit. Oh my goodness. Holy cow. That is a big soup.
Austina says, well done, Jimbob. You made that guy turn, evolve, all shades of red with rage.
I did everything I needed to do. I was successful, not only in pushing the right buttons, but asking the right questions. Thank you so much, Austin. Everybody, that was a $250 super chat directly. No YouTube, directly to the source. Thank you so much. Holy cow. Unbelievable. But that doesn't mean you work visas and everyone below doesn't add to the taxes. We will meet this goal. Sir, redeemed, sir. Redeemed, sir. I honestly think he doesn't have really a place to argue evolution. And I'm looking for better people. You know, Richard Dawkins is a bit old. Rachel? How's it going, Rachel? I saw that Andrew streamed from his shoe closet, his new shoe closet. That was cool. People are like, he's streaming from his office. He's streaming from his, like, and I'm like, no, that's just his sandal closet. If I ever see Andrew in sandals, I'd quit. That's the end. That is the end. You know what I mean? Forget an olive jar. Forget Mean Mr. Mustache Man. Forget Smoky Man Bad. If there was a photo of his feet in little sandals, little Tevas or something, little Birkenstocks, it's the end. Dude, his enemies are like going about it the wrong way. They're completely off with the attack. Completely off. A black called Rachel a Jew today. See? The wonderful world of the internet. Oh, man. By the way, how'd the rest of that I'm a good Christian, you're a bad one go? That was rough. That was rough to watch, honestly. Like, God bless Andrew for giving that guy the time of day. Honestly. He's like, you're mean and I want to stream about it. He wasn't good at cross-examining either. He was like, do you believe scripture to be good people? Andrew's like, yeah, but not your view of it. What kind of questions are these? So he would have been the worst interrogative officer, you know, like in a crime. He was just like pushing toward nowhere. I don't even know what he's doing there. It's not his fault you ask questions. They're ill-informed and pathetically conceived, I know. It's always the cross-examination for these evolution tards. They can't fathom that what's coming out of their mouth is an assertion and not anything more. They just can't, like, it's like Mormons. They're like, because Joseph Smith, You're like, no, that's the thing. Look, I'll look at it again. Watch. If you guys missed it, look at this. Where is it? This was in his opening statement right here. What to expect. If evolution were correct, what we'd expect in the available evidence would look like this. We would expect a gradual progression from simple to more complex organisms. Dude, what the hell? That's literally the claim of what you think is happening. If evolution were correct, which is the gradual progression of simple to more complex organisms, if it was correct, what we would expect is that it's correct. What? The hell? That's like that would be like a creation tard like myself coming into a debate and be like, what would I expect if God created the world and created a variety of animals that were their own types of animals, and they were unique, and humans were unique, and that we have stewardship over the animals and the land? What would it look like? What would the evidence look like? And just say that again. Oh, there are animals, a variety of animals, and that humans have stewardship over the land. That's what I would expect. I don't know what it is, you guys. Is it just that they're not good? They're not used to arguing against anyone. They're surrounded themselves with people who just say, yeah, evolution. That's what it seems like to me. It's like they've never been in the water before. You know what I mean? They never been in the water. We expect, yeah. The killer there, though, my favorite, is the reductio that his brain doesn't have any purpose. I mean, that's just so fantastic. I'm so glad I did that. 7 more minutes, y'all. 6 more. 1 a minute. Let's go. 6 more. 6 minutes. Let's do this. Wait, sandals aren't cool? No. Sandals could work for people. I can pull off sandals. But look at me. I'm saying Andrew, he can't, if he's caught in sandals. I hope I never see it. I hope I never see it. You know what I mean? I hope it never happens. I mean, I can do it. Look at my shirt, for goodness sake. Gorilla Biscuits, $2. Gets me to 45 with David Murdoch's $5. Every argument Dawkins makes for evolution is because of what happened to him as a child. The hate and pain, not science. I agree with that. I mean, we can't bring that to the debate, David, but that's pretty much what's happening. Let's face it. What would you do if you had to convince someone who isn't Christian to choose between God and what evolution says? What would I do? Well, I would just say, one view says nothing matters. That's the entailment. And the other view that says that something matters. And I would just say, if you're going to choose between a view where something matters and nothing matters, what view would you choose? Well, I would just ask them, right? Because nihilism, Tony was like, that guy was like, well, no, it doesn't entail. I mean, I think humans have their very own value. And you're like, dude, you can't even tell me when a human emerges as its own universal category. You know what I mean? Like, you can't even say humans are a thing because they're in flux. They're on their way of not, they'll die humans. But what makes that one tiny section, that tiny blip, I mean, you guys really have to visually conceptualize the timeline that evolution is talking about. There is a blip in billions and billions of years, a blip called humanity as we know it today, where we think we have rights and we eat stuff and we think we love people from their view. We think this is all, we got to fight for the minorities. It's like, what? You arbitrarily pick the time that you exist in this grand scheme of ever-changing flux biological changes and things, and you determine that right now what we are intrinsically matters, right? But our recent ancestors who are more ape-like, it wasn't the same exact thing. It's like, it's nonsense. There's just nothing they can say once you say there's no function and purpose, that was the key part too. Did you guys catch that? It's the old trap I set. So if you guys are missing this, what happened is debate Rob Noor. I actually don't know. I would debate Rob Noor in the past about like his libertarian leanings, but Rob Noor is altering his position to a way more based position. Glory to God. Hope he becomes orthodox. Austin Roberts, $30 just to help with the goal. Thank you so much. There's 3 minutes left. One more to go, y'all. Who's going to do it? Is it Christopher Scott? Is it someone else? Okay, sweet. I got the big guy Hawaiian shirt look, so I'm safe. You are. You can wear sandals, Christopher. Yeah, we can. If you look like me, kind of like artsy, a bit whimsical, you know what I mean? I don't look like the guy who's rolling out of a dolly off a dolly under a car with oil on his face. I mean, I'd do it, but Clicker, $10. Thank you so much. I think nobody trash talk like Stephen Hawking because he spoke through a robot. He could say anything. He was always punching down. Yeah, that's funny, Clicker. Stephen Hawking was always punching down. For the goal, and is it Jim or Bob? It's both, Mari. Thank you so much. Jim, Bob. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. You ask these people whether or not the liver or anything else has purpose. Is there any purpose to it? Now, they'll think, oh, higher purpose. Is there any purpose to anything? No. Why are you debating then? We're not talking about that. We're talking about specific function, like does it serve a purpose to the body? And he really didn't like, he's never been asked that, I could tell. He's never once been asked this. Because I go, can you define function without appealing to something in the definition of purpose? Now, he said task, right? He thought he was clear of the trap because he was like, anything, a system of operation that organized, that completes a task. Well, sorry, bucko. Anyway, any favorite moments? Because I probably won't do a review stream of it because it was so... I'll do a clip. I'll do a clips reel. Definitely some clips reel in there. I actually couldn't get myself to do a clips reel with the feminist Pajit lady because it was so horrifying to listen to. Couldn't even do it. Hey, Tony. Tony. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for showing up, the support. You know what I mean? I know it takes something to watch the debates, but the good news is this. We're going to bring you the most fun, watchable debate that you've ever seen to this channel. Now, it's not going to be super frequent to start, but it's going to be worth just showing up in great masses to watch and participate. And we will soon have like a bit of a stinger for you guys to watch. So it's all brought to you by none other than the two of the only ortho thugs. You see what I mean? We're gonna get into we're gonna design a Corvette too eventually, a yellow ortho thugs Corvette. You know what I mean? Great debate, Barnaby says. Thank you so much, Barnaby. I thought I did quite well. Tap, 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 shoulder. $5. You should debate Terrell Givens, the Mormon scholar, positing God as a product of evolution. Ooh, yeah, that sounds good. Sounds real good. Sounds real nice. Sounds real good and nice. Anywho, what time is it? Yeah, it's about time. It's 10 o'clock. I'm a dad. Any last tips, compliments, concerns, counters? Anything? I will check the internet now and see if there's a nice boy. See if there's any nice boys out there who want to debate. Who it be? Who would it be? Let's check, shall we? You'll be streaming your debate on your channel, the upcoming one. The one I was just talking about, yeah, I'm going to start hosting a very unique, especially produced show, debate show over here that nobody can do. So I mean, you can try to steal it once you see it. You won't be able to do it because you're not crazy like me and my boy. You're not crazy. You can't think of what we think of. It's probably a good thing. You know what I mean? It's not something, it's not, you don't mess with it. You don't just mess with this. You can try, though. Good luck. I can't wait, though. I can't wait. Can't wait to do it. We're going to Tony and I are going to meet up on the stage. I already made the scene in the stage for this debate night. You guys have no idea. You just have no idea. I want an answer to my liver and toxin super chat. Wait, here? Oh, let me look, actually, because you guys gave super chats. It's only fair. You know what I mean? Hold on a second. Let's bring these up. I'm sorry. You guys gave me super chats all night, and I was just yelling at an old guy. You should debate Terrell Givens. Okay, I would do that. David Murdoch, for sure. What's an Australian whale called? A narwhal. Nice. Stupid joke. Nar. Nicely done. I'm going to say that to my kids. Any jokes for kids, you give them, send them my way. Because I'm short. I'm short of kids' jokes. I always end up tailoring it sort of like a dark humor joke. And I'm like, this is wrong. Is it Jim or Jimbob? I got that. And for the goal, thank you. I think nobody trash talks. Okay, I got that. Hawaiian shirt. Dawkins. It's not your fault. Got to look at the bones. This is my favorite, guys.
Based on the bones, as you can see by the bones, are the bones. Based on the bones. Yeah. Based on the bones.
I love it. At least you got some good sound clips, right? Never forget the mom insult. Yeah, don't make fun of my mom. Missing most of the debate tax. Thank you so much for reminding people, Suzanne. Did you not see the goal? Hit the dang goal. This is not Jortlandia. Thank you. We did, and we always will. Citizen of Jortlandia, John Kell, celebrates 14 months. Shout out to John Kell. McClanker writes. Yeah, Clanker writes. We're not animals. We're not aliens. That's right. From his view, we are. So the first genetic human or ape, Grapus, maybe. Schweitz says for 5, we're not humans and brains don't have purpose. Got it. That's right. James being annoying. James needs to debate more so that he can be a better moderator. I mean, God bless him, but geez. Just tell him that you didn't mean to interrupt him. It's just a task within your system, right? There was no purpose to it. Joel Roth subbed. Another $5 from Schweitz says nothing. Reed, $5. He lies that he didn't say something, and then he has to prattle about why he didn't actually say what works. Yeah, that was a bit frustrating. Please ask him the George Floyd question. I certainly did, and he gave a very quick, non-hesitant response. Did you guys see it? It's pretty funny. I'm not an AIDS-riddled monkey fish. Sherlock Gnomes here may think that we're all gorilla snails, but he can't even grow hair, so I ain't trusting him. Also, there's more evidence for dragons than Monkey Man. That's true, actually. I don't know why you would deny dragons being possible. You know what a funny question I asked him was whether or not the eyeball could logically and practically become a liver. And he was like, what? Why are you asking me these questions? I'm like, yeah, exactly. Why do you think? $5 from Schweitz, thank you. THC Tony is fried. He is fried, dude. That guy was fried. Let's contribute to the goal, y'all. Thank you, Schweitz, for playing ball. $10. Mudworks. Hello, everyone. Just got in. What did I miss? You missed a whole lot. Evolution's still gay. Yeah, it is. Let's play a little song. In fact. Why are you so gay? Why are you so gay? Hey! Why are you so gay? Why are you so gay? Hey! Why are you so gay? Why are you so gay? Huh? Why are you so gay? 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 It's just so good. If my hair turns gray, but I remain human, is that an example of observing evolution? It's another good question for him. Feeling secondhand pain from this beating. It was a beatdown. It was like beating up an old person in an old person home. I don't even believe in God, but Jimbo has completely changed my mind in regards to evolutionists and dinosaurs. Nice. Dinosaurs is funny. Can't believe I ever bought this crap. Well, don't touch me. I'm crazy. Thank you for that $5. Stick around. You will probably come around on God. You just need the right kind of approach, I would say. And go to liturgy. Who cares? Look, who cares if you don't believe in God? You have no reason to not go to liturgy. Don't touch me, I'm crazy, if you're still here. Get in there. Get in there, son. Get in there, son. You have no reason not to. We're not animals. We're not aliens. Yep. What happens when David... Okay, this is your question, David. Thank you. Where is it? Hold on. I just lost myself. I lost myself in the music. Where did it go, dude? Terrell Givens. Every argument for what happens to him and his child. Gotta look harder next time. Tony evolved to propagate fallacies. Different opponent, same stories. Got that. He lies. I'm not AIDS riddled. I'm not AIDS riddled. That's a normal super chat on my channel. I'm not AIDS riddled. Okay. David Murdoch says, what happens when an organism can't excrete toxins? They build up. What happens when they build up? So how much time does a liver really have to evolve? That's why, David Murdoch, good question. When I asked him, how does this happen? He had to say it already existed. And this is how evolution works. You notice how he got really antsy when I brought up populations, right? Because this is how you trap these guys. You ask them, is it true that changes and variations in organisms are the product of evolution and random mutation? They go, yes. And you go, are populations an expression of that? And they get all weird. They kind of subconsciously know that if it's true that populations inductively, from their view, what we, quote, know, is that populations come from previous populations. That they themselves, the population itself, is a product of random mutation. Well, that's why he started spurging about abiogenesis, because he knows the entailment of that going back through time keeps necessitating the first population, but they don't have a first population. And they know, even though the debate isn't about creationism, they know that if there's no first population from the evolution paradigm, you don't really have evolution. What you have at best is a type of evolution that you don't have evidence for that starts from not evolution. Not evolution. Started evolution. So, it's just, you watch them freak out, man. It's like I think it's an actual spiritual attack. That's what I think. Good question, David Murdoch, for $10. Jimmy snacking a Gatheist on his stream. Andrew smacking a limp-wristed Christian on his stream. It's better than SNL. It is. Super Chat Nevsky, thank you so much. Bluey for the sub. Hop in my Chrysler. It's a big-ass wolf, right? Austin Titilio says nothing. David James Flood. Epigenetics. Yeah. I didn't even want to get into that, David James Flood. It wasn't even worth it. But that's a good distinction. Epigenetics versus like what you're talking about with evolution. He just kept going back to like, well, there's a group of flies that like changed and I'm like, are they still flies? Do they ever change and is there ever a diversion to some other thing that's not a fly? No. Proto-nub. Yeah, proto-nub the like button. Appeal to authority. Yes, that was very early. Play the song on your guitar. I think I'm caught up. Thank you so much. Recent ones? Anyone recent? And then we'll get out of here. Why was the frog mad when his car broke down? He got towed. Nice. You have 1 million? Dude, you got to send them to me. Because my daughter, when I say goodnight to them and do prayers, they always tell me to tell them a joke because they're like, yeah, they probably get like, oh, Jim, Daddy's a funny guy online. And they're like, yeah? Where? Where? Where does this happen? Show evidence. And I'm just like, what? I have to come up with a kid joke? Oh, it's always some stupid pun. Okay, I think I'm caught up. Take another massive L for evolution. All right. With that, I will send you guys on your way to some other place. Thank you for everyone who showed up and supported me, both with your ears and eyes, but also with your wallets. I don't sell any. I don't read an ad. I wonder if I would read an ad though. Would I read an ad? All right, Unreasonable Man. Which I guess we can go there. Pearl's talking. You guys don't want to hear Pearl, do you? I mean, you guys, look, Unreasonable Man, smaller channel, Hangout, or Pearl. You guys decide. Or maybe you're going to go play Battlefield 6. Who knows? What do I know? Why are you so gay? 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 Never Pearl, please. All right. Well, Unreasonable Man it is. He always has some kind of interesting, low-key sort of conversation. It's very much like a sort of a small lounge feel, like at a hotel bar where everyone went to bed, but you want to finish your drink. I want a drink. I want to do a shot of something right now. That's what I want. After that, I mean, honestly, I want to fight. That's what I want to do. I want to fight. Speakeasy. What do you guys think? Austin's going to bed, so it doesn't matter. I mean, Austin Titilio is going to bed, so it does not matter where you're going. Well, I already said it to the other guy, so that's where you're going. All right? You can go there. You can go wherever you want. Go where your heart desires, okay? With that, God bless you. Go to church tomorrow. Go to liturgy tomorrow if you were thinking about it, okay? I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Maybe I'll talk to you guys Monday, all right? Adios. So gay, why are you so gay? Why are you so gay? Why are you? Why are you so gay? Why are you so damn gay?